Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Who were enrolled in a program called Project 10th. Creating a new generation of soldiers, he described the program for the new super ninjas. And Ruzan exhaled a column of smoke before saying, "So, do you want 10 boys and 10 girls? For a project that you and the scientists have been working on." Danzo, the man who had had the idea, nodded. "To show them that I wasn't just thinking about me, my daughter volunteered to be one of them." And Ruzan sighed as he looked at the young woman. But on the next page, on the right, there was a blonde guy and son. Smiling, raising his thumb towards the camera. "And do you want the boy Uzumaki?" Danzo sighed. "I knew this was going to happen. Like all the elect, he has a strong will and a strong spirit. His regenerative powers would also be beneficial for his survival, and that of everyone else. And yet you still don't want Sasuke or any other Uchiha. No, they are a curse, and any additional power given to some of them will be too much," Danzo said flatly, expressing what he was really thinking. "Anyway, I already have 2 Uchihas. What would that brat want for?" Ruzan tapped the page with his finger calmly, and looked at the scientist next to Danzo. "What is the survival rate?" The scientist, Akane Inoue, turned to her speaker and received a Chenudo gesture. "A normal human would have a 5% chance, if at all. But with the tests we have conducted and the possibility of accepting the regenerative cells of the young Uzumaki-san, we have increased that figure to 50%. If they accept them, they will have an 85% chance of surviving the final tests. Only Naruto is 100% sure of surviving." Ruzan sighed. He didn't like it, but he had to consult with the whole council. "Does anyone want this to be allowed?" The entire council of elders raised their hands, along with the majority of the civil and ninja council. Ruzan was really surprised to see so many raise their hands. "So it's decided. Approved, and all 20 children will be enrolled. I have only one condition, I dance." "What is it?" "If it seems that someone will not succeed, abandon your project and send it home," Ruzan added with a gloomy tone, "so that no one would take it as a joke. And that's an order." Danzo nodded as he stood up. "I will never step out of line, Ruzan. I am not the same as when I created a root." "Pray that it is not so, Danzo." "Pray," Ruzan said as he watched Danzo and Kane leave to prepare for their subjects. Soon, 6 Ambu agents arrived before Ruzan, ready to receive his orders. Each received 4 photos, except for 2. One got 3, and the other got the last one. "These are the kids they will take to Danzo's lab. Get them there without interference tomorrow afternoon." The next day, 1834. Oh, Naruto sighed as he put down another cup of noodles. He smiled at the kind cook. "That's delicious, Toiki. I want another one." The man chuckled at the sight of the blonde youth before nodding, waving the spatula. "Of course, Naruto. What will it be this time?" "Miso," Naruto exclaimed excitedly. "To go," a new voice said, opening the flap to show an Ambo agent. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight of the masked man. "Whatever happens, I didn't do it." The weasel-masked Ambo chuckled at the outburst of the young man. "Don't worry, Naruto, I'm not here for anything you've done. We have to go somewhere, or Toto." Naruto nodded at the man and got up, saying goodbye to the ramen cook. "See you later, Toiki," Naruto hummed as he walked by the silent teenager, with a big smile on his face. An, where are we going?" Weasel smiled under his mask, hugged Naruto, and rubbed his shoulder. "Take it easy, Naruto. You said you always wanted to be a ninja. This will be a huge boost for your career." Naruto smiled and hugged Weasel tightly. "Will you be there to take care of me, Ann?" Weasel nodded and hugged the blonde one tighter. "Of course, Ototo. I will always be there for you at most." Naruto was about to ask more when Weasel stopped him in his tracks. "We arrived," he said and pushed a brick, clicking on the wall. A mechanical hum was heard behind the bricks as they quietly retreated to reveal a metal elevator. They came in and Weasel pressed the number 2 button. Naruto watched as Weasel removed his mask to reveal a role. He showed pale with black eyes. Naruto knew her as Ain, but others called her Itachi. She had been his carer or bodyguard since he was 5, and he was kicked out of the orphanage. He had lived with her ever since, for he was not yet old enough to fend for himself. The elevator that was descending stopped, and almost knocked Naruto down by the unexpected event. He swayed slightly to the left before regaining his balance. He heard Itachi chuckling, and snorted, puffing out his chest. "I did it on purpose. I just wanted to make you laugh." Itachi smiled smugly and nodded. "Oh, of course, Naruto. Of course I do." "Oh? Oh." Danzo watched in silence as the scientists prepared a large metal equipment for the 20 participants. His machines had to be ready to extract Naruto's blood, store it in an arrow chamber, and then have enough for the rest of the kids. He felt someone approaching, and heard the strumming of a pencil on the paper. "So you made it," Danzo said as he looked at the grizzled man writing. The man simply smiled and stopped writing. "This would be a great story one day. Anyway, I have to see those with whom I will work one day." Danzo shook his head before leaving. "This better be another brave ninja story, and not that smut." Jiraiya immediately tore a page out of his book, crumpled it up, and threw it over his shoulder before putting it in his pocket. "Of course not. They're just kids." "Yes, they are," Danzo said, and opened the door to a large metal room. A cool breeze was coming from the fans above to contain the cold accumulated in an underground facility. 20 children aged between 12 and 13 were chatting or sitting around waiting for something interesting to happen. "Listen, children," Danzo said calmly, even though he wasn't good with children. His daughter told him enough. "All have been carefully selected for a special program developed by a great team of scientists. They will be examined, vetted, and, if they pass the tests, trained to become the next generation of ninjas. Do you accept?" All the students started shouting their confirmation with enthusiasm. Danzo raised one hand, and, after a long while, lowered it before the silence. "Now, follow this woman." Danzo motioned to Akane, who had appeared next to him. "His name is Akane, and he will take care of all of you while you live here." "Wait," one of the civilians asked. "Living here? We can't go home and then come back." "No, to make sure they comply with our strict program, they will be forced to stay here. Now, follow her, and she will guide you to your dorms," Danzo said before leaving for his office, leaving Akane in the care of the children. Akane coughed nervously as she watched the children concentrating. "Come on, the facilities are big, and we don't want them to get lost. Are we going to eat soon?" a big brown boy asked. "It's making me hungry already." Akane nodded. "We will make a stop at the cafeteria so that everyone can eat. Now, stay close and don't stray. I will not be able to tell if anyone is moving away from the group." Naruto looked at Hitachi and took the girl's hand, receiving a squeeze from her to reassure her. Chapter 2, Schedule. Naruto was swinging on his heels. The scientists stripped him naked 10 minutes ago to examine him closely. They were muttering words like malnourished and sad, but the young man did not understand the meaning of the first word. He simply ignored her and let the men and women work. When he was done, he was taken to a weight machine and told to get on. As he did so, a few dials started to move before a number appeared. 87 pounds. The man looked sad, but didn't say anything else as he drove Naruto to another area. This area was much more different. I had a huge machine in the middle, with needles coming out of the arms of the chair. That made Naruto cringe and recoil. They were panicking about the needles. "There's a reason I never went to hospitals." The scientist noticed that the boy was backing up and calmly raised his hands. "Don't worry, Naruto, we won't hurt you. These needles are special, they won't even hurt you. They will give you a tingle, and maybe even tickle." Naruto hesitated before feeling a hand on his shoulder. He looked up and saw Itachi smiling at him. She took his hand and led him to the chair, where she sat him down. "Everything will be fine, or Toto. I'll be right here." Naruto squeezed his hand as he was being held, and the needles started coming down. Once they pierced his skin, they didn't hurt. He was surprised, until he saw that blood was being drawn from both arms. "Hey, what are you doing with my blood?" Don't worry, Naruto, they just make sure you're healthy. Itachi held Naruto's hand and looked into his eyes. Just focus on me. Why do they need so much? Naruto asked, concentrating on Itachi. They wouldn't need that much, just to check if I'm healthy. Itachi smiled and put a hand on his cheek. I've never lied to you. They need it to give to other children. They need it to survive training and exams. But why my blood? Naruto was calming down, but mostly because of the cold touch of Itachi's hand. Your blood is special. He has the ability to heal quickly. Have you ever wondered why you never had to go to the hospital? That every cut and scratch healed in minutes, maybe seconds. I thought anyone could do that, Naruto whispered as the machine slowed down the blood draw. Even with all the blood drawn, he didn't feel as exhausted as he thought. Why do I feel good? I thought that if you have blood drawn, you feel weak. Itachi smiled. Your blood also multiplies rapidly. Not a drop has been taken from you so far. Naruto nodded and got up from the seat. He staggered a little, but managed to stand up. Will I have to do that again? No. We're done here. Itachi smiled and hugged Naruto. You are a very strong young man. Naruto smiled and hugged the girl. 2 days later, 10:30, or Naruto would remain quietly in a room, drumming with his fingers on the table. I was waiting for the nutritionist to come back. He was waiting for 5 minutes before the woman finally came in with a tray. He left her and sat down in front of him. He removed each plate and put it on the table. My name is Iramatsusida. I will be your nutritionist and pediatrician. Let's go over the foods that you will eat here and those that you will not. Is ramen allowed? Naruto asked with a bit of fear in his voice. The woman sighed and put down a cup. Sometimes, maybe once a week. Now, pay attention. Naruto nodded and looked at the plate with a round orange fruit, 2 eggs without yolk, a bowl of cinnamon oatmeal, and a glass of milk. This will be your breakfast from now on. First, a grapefruit. It is sweet and full of vitamins. Here, try it. Naruto took the slice of fruit and took a bite. His eyes widened as he tasted her, and he instantly fell in love with her. How delicious. I'm sure you've tried the eggs. With milk. But this is oatmeal. It's like rice, but we can give it to you with cinnamon and mint. Try it. Naruto took some oatmeal from the spoon and took a bite. He arched his eyebrows at the taste. I could smell the aroma of cinnamon and mint, but it was not too intense. It's not bad. Arya felt and pushed the plate and cup aside to make way for the next one. It was a tall plate with 2 baked potatoes, a bowl of cashews, and a 1-kilo steak in miso soup. Next to it, an apple, banana, grape, and pineapple smoothie. This is your lunch. Try it. Why so much? Naruto asked as he took a bite of the steak. Your metabolism is faster than that of a normal person, so in order for you to reach a healthy weight, we need to give you a lot of food. But let it be nutritious, Eri said, and watched Naruto finish drinking the fruit smoothie. Eri pushed the dishes aside and brought forward the last one. It was a big plate with half a 15-centimeter baked bread, asparagus, and battered cod with a carrot, kale, and pumpkin smoothie. This is your dinner. Battered cod with a little lemon juice and garlic, baked bread, and asparagus. Your drink will now be a carrot, kale, and pumpkin smoothie for the rest of your vegetable intake. Naruto cringed at the taste of the smoothie, but swallowed it. It's horrible. I know, Eri said and put all the food in the cart. Have a nice day, Uzumaki. Akane will be back soon. Naruto leaned back when the woman left and sighed. I already knew he wasn't going to enjoy his time on the show. It was going to be only 1 month, Itachi said. Alone. I wish I could think like that. The door opened, waking Naruto from his stupor. Seeing her, Akane opened it. He smiled at her. How was the food? Naruto shrugged his shoulders as he was led through the hallways he was getting more and more used to. It wasn't bad. I'm glad I get to eat ramen once in a while. Akane nodded with a smile. That's great. 12 days later, 1855. Naruto was sitting alone at a table, taking sips of his drink in silence. I would normally be with Itachi Osai, another participant of the project. But Itachi was on a mission, and Sai had gone out for her last physical. During the 2 weeks, Naruto had seen 8 other boys being sent home. He only knew Shikamaru and one of the ones who left, but the others were unknown to him. During the last 2 days of the tests, he was started early for the next test, and given a couple of white and blue pills to take with each meal. He got used to taking them with his food drink so that the chalky texture and fish oil taste would not bother him so much. It was useless, but it made him believe that it was working. Naruto looked at the clock hanging on the wall in front of him and saw that it was almost 7 o'clock. He took the last sip of his horrible smoothie, carried his tray to the conveyor belt, and let it advance towards the back room. She stretched as she walked to the door and sighed, resting her arms behind her head. "Where am I going now?" "You train," Danzo said as he walked from the left aisle towards the young blonde. "You don't want Itachi-san to overtake you so easily, do you?" Naruto smiled at the man with the scar. "Hello, Danzo-san. How about this beautiful day?" Danzo smiled at the young man's attitude. So much happiness and excitement, comparable to that of 10 children. It was almost shocking to someone from his past. At least he wasn't mentally traumatized. "One of the many things I hated Irizen for. The old Okage claimed to be doing his best, but he does nothing. He simply trusts that the inhabitants of his beloved village will listen to him and will not do anything to Naruto." This even made Danzo question Irizen's intentions. But he can't just defy the old man. His past was too controversial for anyone to listen to. "I'm fine, Naruto. How are you feeling?" "No nausea." Danzo smiled at the young blonde man. "Not unless you accept the horrible smell and taste." Naruto clearly showed his displeasure, but soon replaced it with joy. "So, what am I training for? Any cool jutsu or something?" Danzo chuckled and ruffled the golden locks of the energetic blonde. "Take it easy, Naruto. Remember, this program does not teach you jutsus. Its goal is to release the inner abilities of humanity, which have been dormant for so long. As for training, you will go to our gym and follow the training program there." Naruto nodded and said, "Yes, sir." Then he ran to the gym, which was near the doctor's office. Once there, the only occupants were the security personnel who were on a break. Some just stood around chatting, while the rest did weights. Naruto smiled and ran towards the couple who were having an arm wrestle. "Hey, can I try?" he asked, drawing the duo's attention. The woman in the group took advantage of her opponent's distraction and hit the table with her hand. "Ha! It's the 5th time, Kano. And of course, kid. Give it a gentle blow, and I will test your mettle." The woman got up and sat Naruto down in front of the grumpy man, introduced as Kano. He had one eye, the other covered with a patch, and his right arm covered with a sleeve and a glove. He rested his arm on the table, flexing his fingers as he stared at the woman. He smiled smugly and squeezed the blonde's shoulders, massaging them as he pushed Naruto's hand on the table and grabbed Kano's. "The arm wrestling is easy, Naruto. Just use your chakra-free strength to hold Kano's hand to the table without lifting your elbow. Are you ready?" Naruto nodded, squeezed his hand, and Kano smiled at him. "Good luck, Cyclops." Kano's smile widened even more upon hearing the sarcastic comment, and he chuckled. "You're not a bad guy. Don't make it so easy for me." "I won't do it." Naruto smiled as the woman counted from 5, 3, 2, 1. Naruto immediately used his superior speed to get ahead of the older and stronger man. He barely advanced 5 centimeters before Kano stopped his attack. He gritted his teeth, while the one-eyed man smiled mischievously, feigning confusion. "Hey, where's your strength, kid? I thought you'd at least make my life harder." "I'm fast, not strong." Naruto grunted, admitting his lack of strength. "How do you think I haven't been caught with any of my shenanigans?" Kano chuckled and pushed the blonde man's hand away. "Interesting. It's a good thing we caught you before your career as a child, right? Now we can solve that problem." Naruto leaned to the right as his hand rested on the table. "Damn it." Kano flexed his fingers and turned his hand. "You may not be strong, but you have a powerful grip. At least I can count on you if I need help falling off a cliff." Naruto smiled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his neck. "Thank you. And I'm glad to know that you will support me." Kano smiled and looked around before grabbing some paper and pencil. As he was starting to write, he said to Naruto, "Here, follow this and you won't need my support. In a week, we'll take a pulse again." Naruto smiled and nodded, taking the paper. "You got it." As Naruto walked away, following him first on his list, the woman sat across from Kano as her eyes followed him. "The blonde one. It really seemed like you were trying hard, Kano." Kano smiled smugly, looked away from the blonde, and fixed on his hand. "He's an interesting guy, Yugao." "Very interesting indeed." Chapter 3. One of a kind, Naruto sat in a chair next to Danzo, Kane and Tachi, watching a large room full of chairs with wires and machines. He looked at the old man before asking, "Hey, what are those machines for?" "They look like the same ones I was connected to." Danzo nodded with a mocking smile. "Yes, they are quite similar. But its purpose is the opposite. They pump the blood to the body, the blood that we extracted from you, so that they have the same benefits as you." "Benefits? Like which ones?" Naruto asked, confused. There was nothing special about it. Apart from his container, it was normal. "Well, have you ever had a cut or something similar, but it instantly healed?" Naruto nodded. "Not everyone can do that, so in order for the benefits to be passed on to others, we need to give them your blood, which contains the add strands necessary for that ability, although it is not yet known if it will work for everyone." Naruto nodded. "It's okay. I get it now." Danzo smiled before pressing a button on the console in front of them. "Have them come in." The door opened a second later and a group of 12 boys entered. Naruto noticed that Choji and Sai were there. He couldn't help but smile to see that at least 2 of his friends had passed the tests. Itachi noticed this and gave Naruto a soft heart. He looked at her and saw her mouth. "Stop smiling at Sai like that." She blushed and scratched the back of her neck as she looked away. "It wasn't." Hitachi smiled smugly before gently scratching Naruto's head and embracing him fraternally. Naruto smiled and returned the hug before noticing that everyone else was connected to the machine. The doctors did nothing else, waiting for Danzo's orders. "Are you ready?" the man asked as he looked at Akane. She nodded and leaned towards the communicator. "It begins." Each doctor moved in sync when turning on the machines containing Naruto's blood. This was injected into the veins of others, but then filtered to mix it with their blood. It looked like a mad scientist movie. Naruto grimaced and looked away when one of the others started shaking uncontrollably, forcing the 2 closest doctors to stop the blood and switch tanks. "What are they doing?" Itachi rubbed his hair as he replied. "His body wasn't strong enough to handle the potency of your blood. They need to replace it with the blood they collected from that specific person." "Will they be okay?" Naruto asked, burying his face in Itachi's shirt. Itachi chuckled as Danzo and Akane smiled at the boy's concern. "Yeah, they should be fine." "That's good," Naruto muttered, not revealing his face for the rest of the test. In total, only 7 passed the test and were taken to their room to rest. Naruto, on the other hand, had fallen asleep on Hitachi and was having a very strange dream. Naruto looked around in the darkness. "I had been in this sewer once, but there was more light before." "Where are you, Kirby?" "I can't see, it's so dark." "I'm here, Foxy-kun." "I don't see anything either," the voice of the fox demon said. "I think it's those pills you take. Since you started taking them, my body hurts non-stop, and not for the usual reason." "That sucks, Kirubi. I don't want to know." Naruto shouted, disgusted with the woman's personal problems. "Anyway, how do I turn on the light here?" "Think of one, remember. This is your domain," he replied, although closer. It seemed pretty close. "Phew." Naruto grunted as he tripped over something on the ground. "Was it you, Kirub?" "Yes." The woman groaned. "I'm sorry." "Wait a minute," Naruto said before imagining a switch on the wall near him before one appeared and turned it on. As soon as he turned around, he saw a fierce Kyuubi in front of him. "Ah, I'm sorry. I didn't know why I was saying it, I was just saying it. It looked like I had done something wrong." Kyuubi, on the other hand, hugged the boy tightly, sinking his head in his chest. "Oh, thank God you're okay. I knew that nothing would happen to you, but if I was suffering, I was afraid that you would be too. All right, down, girl. Kyubi obeyed immediately and sat on his legs wagging his tail. He smiled smugly. I knew you liked being the one in control. Naruto shuddered. Well, is this obeying you, crazy dominatrix? The Kyubi shuddered with closed eyes and a smile dying of joy. Oh, you know that? Naruto choked on the woman's display and almost fell backwards. That one is. Whatever. What? Nothing. 2 weeks later, 15, 39, or 399. 400. 401. Naruto shouted as he got up above his knees, wrapped around a metal bar connected to the wall. 402, 403, 404, 40. Okay, Naruto, that's enough. Now it's your turn to fight someone, Akane said from a loudspeaker in the northwest corner. Who is it this time? Naruto asked, taking a turn and landing on his feet. How many would that be? 3 men now. 2 in one day. The door opened and a man came in. She had white hair, pulled back in a ponytail with a headband. Despite his age, he remained strong and with an agile step. Naruto looked at the mirror with a pained expression. Really? Are you going to make me fight with the old man? It looks like he could be one of the founders of Konoha. Looks can be deceiving, a female voice said from her head. That doesn't mean I'm not wrong. Naruto complained as he bent down to grab the double katanas and strapped them to his back. Then he turned and pointed his finger at the old man who was writing, You're going to fall, old man. Jiraiya wrote one more sentence, copying what the young blonde said before putting the book away. Maybe under normal circumstances, but I've been learning some things too, brat. Naruto scratched his head at the old man's pose. Aren't you a little old to be part of this project? Hirai has already carefully observed the young man's clothes. He was wearing a tight black and silver suit with a mask of the same color, but with red eyes. He carried the chakra weapon prototypes in holsters on his thighs and 2 sheathed katanas on his back. Isn't that a strange outfit for a child? Jiraiya asked, getting ready for the fight of her life. Are those books you write for an old man to read? Naruto asked, lowering the mask that, which he was carrying in his pocket, and taking a katana in his right hand and a chakra weapon in the other. Ah, so you've heard about me. Jiraiya smiled before watching the young man disappear. He dodged to the right, narrowly dodging the attack of Naruto's katana. Then he saw the chakra cannon digging into his stomach. Quickly. But how much? Jiraiya stepped back and threw a kick at Naruto from behind, but his attack went through him, and the blonde, who was once there, was gone. He looked around, trying to find the young man, but caught only glimpses of his katana. Quickly. Very quickly. A sharp edge dug into Jiraiya's side, and he grimaced. Hey, this is just practice. You're just a baby, aren't you? Complaining about anything. Cool. Naruto joked, talking to him like a baby. Maybe you should take this seriously like me, Jiraiya-chan. Jiraiya's right eyebrow twitched and he frowned. Jiraiya-chan. He hit the place where Naruto used to be hard, hearing a funny laugh all around him. He spun on his heels and hit the fading image of Naruto. Face me like a man, Naru-chan. See. There you have it. You take it seriously. Naruto laughed as he patted Jiraiya on the shoulder. Do you want to learn a new trick, Jiraiya-chan? Jiraiya turned around and saw the masked boy shouting, Rock, paper, scissors. Nuts. A howl of pain echoed on the walls throughout the compound. Naruto watched as the man fell on his face as he grabbed where it hurt the most. But Naruto wasn't finished yet. He looked around and found a training sword in a corner and a rubber mallet. After grabbing both of them, Naruto lined up the edge of the sword and tried his strike on the other end. Naruto, what are you doing? Said the worried voice of Akane, playing golf. To walk. Naruto shouted, mistaking the word for football, and slammed the mallet against the tip of the sword. Another scream could be heard as part of the handle of the training sword was rammed into Jiraiya's butt, stopping only because of the clothes he was wearing. Naruto was laughing at himself, although a little regretful. He only did it because Kyubi had told him. I should try Orochimaru-chan if I come across him too. That would be hilarious, the slutty goddess said with a laugh. But let me do it. I would go much further. Danzo shuddered when he heard Jirella's screams, having already seen the results of the boys' tests in the simulators. There were 8 difficulty levels that addressed possible difficulties, future cultures that had to be faced. Naruto had a great time, completing the missions perfectly. The only one who approached him was Hitachi, who stopped at the 6th level. But what made him scary was the boy's sense of humor, which was mixed with his attacks. He tried many horrible attacks on the simulations that made almost all the examiners faint or vomit. No one could laugh except the blonde one. However, it was also a good thing. His sense of humor never allowed the day to become a boring and easy time. He certainly kept them on their toes around him. Now, the only thing I had to solve was the problem with Akatsuki. I had heard interesting news about what the criminal group had been up to. In addition to that, 4 of the other participants passed the tests: Seidomino, Choji Warpak, Mori. They deserved their new skills. Chapter 4, Say Hello. Naruto stood next to Danzo as he watched the other 4 passing by. He was smiling to see that Sai and Choji had passed the grueling tests, but both of them had changed a lot due to the side effects. Sa, despite some reaction, developed a black spot around his left eye, and his chakra shot to that of Ichibi's Hinshiriki. Choji was the most shocking. Firm being a heavy child of more than 200 years, he had now turned into a mountain of muscles with red eyes and long black hair. He almost threatened Naruto because of how scary he became. The other 2 were the only ones who didn't belong to a clan or belong to a ninja environment. The first one was a girl with long purple hair and light violet eyes with purple lipstick. He was wearing a black jumpsuit with black gloves and black stockings without any shoes. The second was a tall boy with blue eyes and fair skin. He was wearing a white suit with black zigzag markings from the black boots to the head. On top, he was wearing a white coat with the sleeves tucked comfortably under the gloves. Danzo, however, looked proud with a big smile. It had never looked like this, except when seeing Naruto's potential in simulations. I want to personally congratulate you all for getting through this exhausting month. But it has made them stronger, and they probably feel it already. But this group will have its rules. Everyone paid attention to the man, bright faces and smiles all the time. This is a strictly confidential group. Everything will be done on the sly. Only the Okage and I will know, and those who work here. Even the Zambu will have little information about our activities. Again, outside of their teams, they will only answer to me, the Okage. Danzo paused and smiled to ease the tension of his words. Now everyone is special and a family. Trust each other, both here and there. But now we have to evaluate each other's skills and new names. Who is the leader, Danzo-san? Sai asked complicitly, staring at Naruto. Danzo nodded at the question. Yeah, well, since Naruto is the one who has completed all the tests successfully and has trained longer than you, I think we can agree that he will be the leader. Despite his madness, we can be sure that he will take it seriously. Everyone turned around to see Naruto holding his nose, staring at Akane, who was standing next to him, just as confused as everyone else. Suddenly, openly, he shouted, "You just farted." Akane's face turned as red as a tomato, and she slapped Naruto. "No, I didn't, you idiot. Don't say that." Danzo patted his face before muttering, "At least I hoped so." He then punched the blonde in the back of the head before screaming, "Pay attention." Naruto rubbed his head while looking at Danzo. "Okay, Daddy, I'll be good." Danzo shook his head, between amused and disappointed. Anyway, let's start with Naruto's abilities. He will be called from Adpal forever, courtesy of Kano, and he will be the leader of the group. He has fast regeneration, teleportation and aiming skills with chakra weapons, is almost a master at swordsmanship with the katana, and has fast reflexes. He is even on the verge of insanity. Danzo moved on to the next paragraph of the newspaper in front of him. Sai will now be known as Domino, courtesy of Itachi. Why do I dominate? Sai asked, surprised that that was the name Itachi had given her. He says he named you that because everything you do almost always creates a chain reaction, like domino chips, Danzo replied, reading Itachi's note. In addition, you also have a rapid regeneration ability and telekinesis from birth. You are skilled with chakra guns and have amazing reflexes and eyesight. Moriko Fujimoto, your name will now be Silic, as instructed by your examiner, Akane. You possess the capacity for regenerative healing, albeit weaker, telepathy, a form of precognition and empathy, plus some telekinesis. Finally, you have experience with the katana. Danzo turned the page. Chojiya Kimichi, you will be known as Warpath, granted by Kano. You are resistant to injuries, in addition to the healing factor that makes you a mountain, and you possess greater strength, agility, speed, endurance, and flexibility. You also have the ability to track, finding anything we've hidden or destroyed with little evidence. Naruto looked at Choji, as he didn't see the improved speed being a part of it. Strength yes, but speed. It looks like he can take on Raikage in a fair fight, Kyugi said, slightly impressed by the boy's physique. Maybe, Naruto replied as Danzo moved on to the last paragraph. Ryota Shizuka, they call you Phantom X now. Interestingly, you have multiple brains, nanosanguage that enhances your healing ability, and an increased ability to create illusions and feel them. You are also skilled with chakra pistols and the katana. Danzo pushed the paper away from his face as he turned his attention to the group. On missions together, call each other by these names as if you were born with them. Names mean everything, and whoever gets them has power over you. Anyway, see you next time and take care. We'll do it. They all answered before following Akane. Naruto looked at his watch, having taken off his outfit, and put on a black shirt with ten, black pants, and blue sandals. He was at the south gate of the village, waiting for his new equipment to arrive. They handed him the document of his sensei, and indicated the place where they would be when they left on their new mission. They're late? What the hell? Naruto muttered as he started to come up with a plan to play a prank on his new team. And when they open the door, they will get an unpleasant surprise. Naruto started laughing darkly just as his team appeared. Naruto? Kakashi asked while looking at the deranged child. Naruto looked at the group of four. Are they my team? Yes. My name is Kakashi, and these two are my students. Kakashi spoke and pointed to the two who were accompanying him. The rose is Sakura and the raven is Sasuke. Naruto was dancing in his head, thinking about everything he could do to his team. I've seen worse. What's that supposed to mean, you idiot? Sakura shouted, bringing Naruto back to the past. You should be glad to be on this team. Naruto touched his ear. Sorry, what was that? I didn't hear you because of the ringing in my ears. Sakura was about to punch El Rubio when her client, Tazuna, pushed her away. The man walked up to Naruto and smiled at him, patting him on the back. I like you already, kid. Come on, I'm glad you've got my back. Naruto and Tazuna left as they were talking, leaving a gaping group behind. Kakashi rubbed the back of his neck, confused. I guess we can talk about likes and dislikes later. How can it be that that man likes that idiot? Sakura shouted, still angry about earlier. Because he stood up to you, Kakashi said with a smile. He certainly doesn't like either of us. Sakura snorted. Who can't like my Sasuke-kun? He must be blind. Kakashi kept his smile while leading the rest of the group, only to hear Naruto. If you do that, I'll pour alcohol on you and cut off the happy part. Tazuna suddenly burst out laughing, thinking it was a joke, but Kakashi sensed the madness in her voice. He was serious, although he concealed it with a maniacal joy. What made it so? It wasn't like that a month ago. Sasuke saw Kakashi's thoughtful look and frowned as he looked at the blonde man's back. He had never been one to listen to his instincts, but now they were acting more forcefully than ever. They were shouting warnings about the boy and asking him to be alert around him. It just confused him more than it should. He recalled the blonde from the academy and how he struggled to create a single clone, or eng. What's wrong with me? I must be training too much. Yes, that's it. I have to go at my own pace. Sasuke said to himself, but it did not reassure him. But this is what the blonde One-Izen is talking about. Sakura had thoughts that were far from those of her companion. She was devising a way to make the blonde guy pay for embarrassing her in front of the guy she liked. He's ruined my chances with Sasuke-kun for too long already. I've had a month alone with him, and now he's coming back. This is not fair. Naruto sensed the feelings of the rest of his team, and turned his head to observe with amusement the attention he was receiving from his teammates and the sensei. Hey, you can always ask if you want to see me. I don't mind posing. Naruto ignored his tenant's growl and chuckled while Tazuna laughed. What do you think about this? Naruto made a ridiculous pose, like the one the Kumo modelers would do, tensing his muscles. The most visible thing was her buttocks, which made Sakura scream and Sasuke cover his eyes. Kakashi paid no attention when he realized what the blonde was going to do, and was saved from the scene. Naruto laughed as he continued with the customer who was laughing chokily. Definitely. I can definitely get used to this group. And so, the group of 5 walked towards their destination, Wave. Naruto hummed to himself as he stared at the clouds, or the absence of them. He sighed to himself with satisfaction. What a beautiful day. It could only get better if something happened. This one has been boring. Naruto, pay attention. You are not inside the village walls, and you could be attacked by bandits. Kyuubi informed his container about the dangers outside a village. Relax, Kyuubi, everything will be fine. Whoever I attack will only serve to amuse me from this boring walk. Kyuubi grunted. Don't complain to me if you get hurt. It still wouldn't matter when I had my healing ability. Naruto said arrogantly, knowing that it would irritate the demon. Besides, a few simple bandits wouldn't be much of a challenge. They should be ninjas. After a while, she heard a scream behind her and turned to see Sakura. Scared because her sensei had been trapped in a chain with shurikens that was tearing her skin. They pulled and tore Kakashi apart, leaving only remnants of his clothes. Naruto grabbed the katana he was carrying on his back, under the backpack, and spun it several times. Don't worry, Tazuna-san, I'll protect you. Tazuna nodded, and moved closer to the boy, but far enough away not to be hit by the spinning blades. Thanks, kid. Naruto nodded as he watched Sasuke fight the 2 men alone, while Sakura remained rigid with fear. He sighed. Sakura, come and protect Tazuna. What? Sakura and Tazuna screamed in shock and looked at El Rubio. I don't want that weakling to protect me. Are you crazy? Tazuna looked at Naruto angrily, feeling betrayed. They need me more with Sasuke. They'll kill him without me, the bastard. Naruto replied, throwing the insult as if it were clouds. Before anyone could disagree, Naruto had replaced himself using his speed, as his abilities had to be secret. Then, he kicked Sasuke to get him away when a chain almost wrapped around him, but instead, he caught Naruto. The 2 enemy ninjas chuckled before pulling, but they didn't move, and looked at him. Naruto still had his foot in the air, and the chains tore his pants, exposing his leg. They were surprised to see that the wound was healing with the object still inside. Naruto smiled before pulling him, dragging them to the ground, and bringing them a few meters closer. Mizu and Gozu unhooked the chain from their gauntlets before attacking with movement. Synchronized. Naruto smiled as he blocked every punch and lunge with his katana, even bringing some closer. It bothered him a lot that the chain was still on his leg, restricting his movements. One mistake, and I was lost. Naruto thanked his kami that the 2 of them were distracted. Distracted with the he struggled and whipped with his leg, causing the chain to wrap around the neck of one of the gauze. They both let out a stifled scream when the shuriken of the chain stuck on their neck. But their hands prevented them from destroying something important. Naruto pulled on his leg, whipping the boy. Yukiri before unwinding the chain from his leg. He spun on his right leg before delivering a hard kick to the other's exposed back. A sickly rustling was heard, and the birds flew away from the danger. Naruto watched as the man fell paralyzed, screaming. He picked it up. He placed it next to his brother and, unintentionally, dropped it on the chain, which provoked another scream. He ran between his teeth as he took the chain off Gozu's neck and wrapped it in his hands. Kakashi appeared among the trees in a column of smoke, earning Sakura's shocked gaze and Sasuke's, which was probably aimed at Naruto. Good job, group. They behaved well. It's all thanks to me. Naruto smiled as he sheathed his katana. Baka. That was the answer he received from his pink-haired companion. Chapter 5: Shady Deals. Naruto whistled a cheerful tune, but he kept his eyes attentive and his senses alert, with the swords resting on his shoulders, and the blades clutched in his hand. The rest of the group found it uncomfortable, but the blonde was not bothered by the sharp edges that stuck in his palms. In fact, they made him swing his shoulders to sink the blade deeper, deep into the palm, causing Sakura to wince in pain. Kakashi looked at Naruto deep in his thoughts, and noticed that the palms were not cut, because the blood had not yet covered the blade. Any other swordsman who did something like that would surely cut himself, if he had been stupid enough to do it. But then he noticed that the blonde tensed for an instant before relaxing, and slowly sliding the swords from his shoulders. Then he felt it. He heard it. A large chakra source was following them, moving quickly through the forest, without a single noise, except the gentle lifting of earth. A soft sound of something cutting the air. "Get down!" Kakashi shouted and forced Sakura to duck before running towards Tazuna, but he knew he wouldn't make it. The object was coming too fast. But Naruto was facing the trajectory of the object, and, with the strength of a bull, he swung his two swords forward and to the side. What he caught was a large sword, which made Kakashi shudder when he saw the weapon and heard the sound of metal colliding. Naruto had diverted his movement to the front of the road they were heading towards. Naruto looked at the chipped part of his sword that he had hit her with. He frowned. Nothing made him angrier than something that would damage his swords. They were her babies. "Where are you, you bastard?" Naruto shouted, shaking his fist. "I will destroy you and use you as a shelter for what you did." A series of dark laughs were heard and the fog became a little denser before returning to its original state. Standing near the gun was a tall man with pale skin and brown eyes. Her black hair was short and spiky, with a headband tied to one side and no visible eyebrows. The lower half of his face was covered with bandages. He was shirtless, only a belt was visible, and he was wearing baggy trousers with the typical Kirigakure camouflage. She was wearing wrist warmers that came up to her elbows and matching leg warmers. "He seems to be a good swordsman, kid. You should feel honored to receive such compliments from me." The man shouldered the sword and looked at Naruto, ignoring everyone else. Naruto stared at him for a minute before asking, "Why should I feel honored? I know I'm the best swordsman." This provoked a laugh in Zabuza. It seemed funny, but it also contained something else. When he finally stopped, he looked at Naruto again, but this time with a funny expression. "You remind me of myself when I was in the academy. You must be a valuable tool for your village and envied by your own team." Naruto smiled, for he had forgotten what had happened to his swords after the flattery. "Thank you. I'm glad someone is noticing." Zabuza smiled and waved her hand. "Now get moving, kid, I've got a job to do." "But so am I." Naruto replied by twirling his swords, ready for anything. "No, Naruto, let me take care of him," Kakashi said before turning to his other students. "Go and protect Tazuna. I will do my best during my training to keep Zabuza away from our client." Naruto complained, but followed his superior's order. For now, Zabuza chuckled as she turned to the white-haired young man. "You couldn't let the kid and I fight, huh? Swordsman against swordsman, a truly honorable fight." Kakashi nodded, lifted up her headband to show her Sharingan, and took out a cradle and from her bag. "A renegade ninja with a sense of honor. That's funny. You're not one without blood on your hands either. Attack," Zabuza said earnestly as he readied his sword, and the fog thickened. Naruto closed his eyes and supported his right hand, but kept turning his left as he followed Zabuza through his senses. Something that cannot be completely hidden is the chakra. He felt the fountain hovering over the earth around him, probably looking for a weak spot. Kakashi probably wouldn't have a weak spot, but there was one where. "Move it!" Naruto shouted as he pushed Sakura out of the way and met Zabuza with a metallic sound, although the blonde received a cut on the shoulder. Zabuza smiled as he pushed his sword harder, forcing Naruto to back off. "What will you do when you face a stronger and more experienced opponent?" Naruto smiled before whispering loudly enough for both of them to hear. "Use my powers." Zabuza was confused for a second, before being pulled back into the air, but he did a somersault and landed on his feet. To watch the next show, Naruto had put his two swords in their holster under his backpack and pulled out a new one. This sword was of an opaque silver to prevent it from shining in the light and had a wooden handle with a black braided cord around it. This sword is called the Glory of the 10 Powers, Naruto said as he brandished the blade slowly, visibly cutting through the air with a smile at the sight of its edge. Do you know anything about it? I thought it was lost in World War I and Shinobi when the village that created it was killed and reduced to ashes. Zabuza muttered as she watched the sword move. Such a sword should not be underestimated. It was. Naruto spoke before holding the sword properly. But it was not destroyed with the village. Instead, the spirits of the craftsman entered her to protect her. For me, getting the blessing to control the sword of 10 old, spiteful and completely clumsy artisan spirits was no easy task. Annoying tests. Zabuza laughed to himself despite his situation. You're amazing, kid. May I ask, how did you find that sword? You too, and no. Naruto had teleported in front of Zabuza, with his sword up and a smile on his face. Block if you can. The older man raised his axe and was surprised to see how the smaller katana cut it. He cursed to himself and jumped to get away from the blonde, but was surprised to be confronted by him again. He deflected the blade to the side, knowing that he would not be able to take the blow head-on. He jumped back to gain space before making a series of hand signals. Release of water. The water bullet technique. Naruto used the jutsu with full force and was thrown back to where Tazuna was. Naruto started screaming across the water, although Zabuza didn't know if he was making fun of him, but he still continued with the jutsu. Then he saw Naruto sliding and spinning around. Phew. Super sliding. That caused Zabuza to choke up and cancel his own jutsu. What's the matter with you, kid? Are you missing something? Naruto shook his head. No, it seems that's it. That's not a nut. Zabuza hesitated to comment, but instead, he turned away a crow that was attacking him. Did Konoha really touch your head or something? Naruto shook his head. It's my fault. More or less. Zabuza nodded. If you don't mind, I need to finish this fight and get paid. Are you getting paid? Naruto asked, tilting his head slightly. Have you already forgotten that I was hired to kill Tazuna? Zabuza shouted while staring at the crazy blonde. How much do they pay you? Naruto asked, intrigued. Surely the amount of money was more than that of a rank C, 200,000 Ryo, Zabuza replied simply, feeling that the salary was a bit low for him. Naruto smiled before getting up. And how much does the man who hired you really have? Zabuza reflected for a moment as she remembered that she had been shown the man's vault as proof of his wealth. About 5,441,934 rivers, according to my calculation. Naruto smiled before approaching the man with a creepy expression, rubbing his hands together. Hey, do you want to split all that money? What? Zabuza looked at the boy as if he were an alien. 200,000 is better than the meager 30,000 I would get for this mission. But the man who hired you, what's his name? Naruto asked, realizing that he hadn't heard it yet. Cat. Zabuza replied, totally attentive to the child. He has 5,441,934. It's a lot, even between us. Naruto smiled greedily as he saw a twinkle in the old man's eyes. Listen, I'm just asking you not to kill the old man. Pretend like you're going to kill him, like you're going to put on a show, and even temporarily paralyze my sensei. And I'll pretend like you're going to defeat you. I'll find you anyway and we can ransack his house. Zabuza smiled at the boy under the mask and chuckled sarcastically. I can get used to you, boy. Selling your mission and your team for money, great. Fine, but you don't have to defeat me. Corner me near the forest behind me and pretend you're going to kill me. I have a friend watching. Naruto nodded. Now kick me back as hard as you can. Zabuza did just that, and Kakashi returned with his team after having fought a group of water clones. Only to see his student land in front of him. Naruto. Kakashi shouted while examining him. I told you not to fight with him. Naruto smiled and grimaced in pain in his stomach, feeling some broken ribs healing. I couldn't help it, sensei. I thought I could beat him. Naruto could be considered a top actor with what he was doing right now. He should have used my cheese, might as well have been his middle name. Kakashi patted Naruto on the shoulder as he got up, and Naruto sat up. Take it easy. I'll finish it. Naruto smiled smugly as he saw his sense and approached his opponent. He looked at his companions. They watched him with an expression of suspicion. He kept pretending to be in pain as he got up and walked over to his team. What did you talk about with the enemy? Sakura whispered suspiciously as she watched her teammate. Nothing. Only he'd better give up or he'll die. Naruto lied in a calm voice, not counting the short breaths he took to be more convincing. We argued and he kicked me. Damn, it hurt. Sasuke rolled his eyes. His instincts were screaming at him again, as if they were telling him something about the blonde. Now I felt that it was more than just a training fever. The blonde man was hiding something, and more than he had talked to Zabuza. I had to be cautious. Naruto stared at his raven companion and smiled. Are you okay, Sasuke? You don't look so good. Maybe it's the sun. Too much vitamin D can be harmful, you know. Sasuke frowned as he noticed her naturally pale skin. I've always been like that, Tobe. But now you're really getting a tan. Look, I think I see you getting a tan already, Naruto teased, pointing to the other guy's arm, where nothing had changed. Sasuke looked between his arm and that of his blonde companion before shaking his head. You're delusional. Only someone delusional would say that, Naruto said with a mocking smile. It takes the pressure off them and others. You're so suspicious, Sasuke. You don't want to attract attention for fear someone will find out. Sasuke glared at the blonde. I was getting on his nerves. Shut up, Tobe. Meanwhile, Kakashi was struggling to finish his fight quickly. He thought that Naruto would have weakened Zabuza even a little to tip the scales, but the renegade ninja came out almost unscathed. Maybe he trusted his student too much. What's the matter, Kakashi? Are you having problems? Zabuza taunted from the fog, attacking fiercely and suddenly before disappearing. Kakashi blocked Kubikibicho's air attack before launching an attack of his own, only to kill a water clone. Kakashi felt that his chakra was shrinking due to the constant strengthening of his reflex muscles, in order to react faster to attacks. Damn it! This isn't going very well. Kakashi attacked another clone, and, before he could react, a blunt object hit his back, knocking him to the ground. He jumped forward just in time before Zabuza almost hit him again. He was about to attack again when he felt something hit a nerve in his back. He looked and saw two wooden needles sticking out. Kakashi tried to reach out and grab them, but he felt his entire body go numb. He fell on his face and watched as Zabuza fought Naruto again. He noticed the restriction in his movements until Zabuza was unarmed and about to attack with his sword. Naruto smiled and winked at him, provoking a silent giggle. Then, two identical embons protruded from his neck and he fell to the ground unconscious. Naruto felt the chakra approaching, while his friend Zabuza was telling him that he was watching him, so he's not dead. Naruto thought, and bent down as if taking his pulse, although he didn't know exactly how. He just copied what he saw doctors do in the movies. He sighed as if Zabuza had died and looked at the fake ninja hunter who was approaching. Then he smiled and approached the person. So, to what do I owe this gratitude? Naruto asked coquettishly, and at first he wasn't sure, but thank God for his heightened senses, he was able to determine his gender. The ninja hunter pulled Naruto aside to head towards Kakashi. I'm sorry, Honin of the Blade, but that was my prey. Kakashi mumbled an acceptance sign, and tried to move once the needles were taken out, but he couldn't. Hey, I still can't move. The ninja hunter nodded. You won't be for a while. Then he approached the unconscious renegade ninja and picked up the body. He paused with the one-handed signal and turned to Naruto. She stared at him, while Naruto flashed her a wide smile. And my name is Aku, Genin of the Leaf. Naruto's smile widened as the girl left in a whirlpool of water along with Kubikibicho. To hell with Zabuza, I'm going to get her. It will rip your soul out. Kyubi replied warily. What the hell? Naruto exclaimed in his head, picking up his sensei. Were you really sleeping right now? QB laughed warily. Of course. You're not exactly spectacular fighting. Why is that? Naruto grunted in his head, not listening to his sensei. The road to Tezuna's house finally passed without conflicts with other ninjas or the other cat thugs. It was quiet, except for Tezuna's occasional guttural laugh. He and Naruto had gotten along well and had become the best of friends. While Naruto liked the man's laid-back character, Tezuna loved the blonde one for his jokey and otherwise youthful personality. Although he was scary at times, Kakashi was still motionless and was hanging on Naruto's shoulder like a rag doll. From time to time, he had to scold his student every time Naruto told a joke so funny that he slapped him. Sasuke and Sakura were walking a few meters behind the others. Sakura glared at Naruto while cursing and mentally planning. She hated this version of Naruto more than the one who always asked her out. If I hated the blonde one at the time, I would have admitted that I missed the old one. Sasuke, on the other hand, was looking curiously at his companion. He was confused by the feelings that agitated him. It was something I had never felt before. It scared him. Is that your house, Tezuna? Naruto asked as the group approached a house at the end of the dirt road they traveled. Yeah, it's not much, but it's still standing. Tezuna nodded as she opened the door. Tsunami. I'm already at home. A few scratches were heard coming from upstairs before they reached the stairs and Tuzan. A blurred figure shouted before hugging Tezuna. I was so worried. I was starting to think that you didn't even make it to Konoha. Tezuna chuckled and patted the woman on the back before pushing her away. Tsunami, this is Naruto. He is the ninja who protects me. Hey. And what about us? Sakura shouted, staring at the old man. He received a dismissing hand in response and otherwise ignored it. Naruto left his sensei on the ground before bowing to Tsunami. Pleased to meet Tezuna's dear daughter. I will try my best now that I know what my prize could be. Tsunami froze as she tried to process what the boy was saying before an intense blush rose up her cheeks. And she tried to hide it behind her hand. Tezuna let out a thunderous laugh as she patted the blonde on the back. Good luck, kid. I wish you the best of luck. Father. Tsunami shouted, covering her whole face with her hands. Tezuna laughed again and hugged her daughter. Cool, it's okay. I'm sure he's just kidding. Not really. Naruto replied, looking at the man with a mischievous twinkle. Tsunami took a look at the blonde one through her fingers and received a toothy smile from her. Paka. She watched as the blonde was hit behind the head by Sakura and kicked continuously. You don't behave like that with a lady. No wonder, all the girls in the village hate you. Not all, many. Naruto muttered. Even today, I have a fan club. Silence. Sakura kicked the boy one more time before bowing to Tsunami. Sorry about the idiot. Sometimes he behaves like an animal. You haven't seen anything yet. Naruto chuckled before taking another kick. Wait till you see my skills. Another kick. Tsunami would have almost forgotten about the comments if the blonde hadn't taken out more quilting. No, it's okay. It is nice that a lively group of people is in the village again. What do you mean? Sakura asked, confused by the comment. You were in high spirits a little while ago, too. Tsunami and her father became depressed, making Sakura feel unwell. Small moments are nice, but they don't last, Tezuna said quietly, nothing to do with the cheerful tone she had with Naruto. But hopefully, when the bridge is finished, the village will be able to return to what it was before. Naruto looked at Tezuna blankly before slapping the back of Sakura's calf. Why did you do that, you idiot? Sakura shouted, turning her attention to the blonde. Because you made the atmosphere very depressing, Naruto muttered, resting his face on the wooden floor. He was very happy, and you just had to mention the state of the village. How was I supposed to know? I saw it, heard it, felt it, and suspected it once on the boat, Naruto began, loud and clear. Though his face was sunken in his arms. Having to sneak across the bridge so they wouldn't find us. I get it. We are hiding from Cat. But the man's look that gave me away. What do you mean? Sasuke asked, not noticing anything wrong with the man. He was skinny. That's really not a problem. Not if it was a healthy thinness. Like you and me, we are healthy slim because we eat well. Naruto spoke, lifting his face to look at the raven. Her eyes were dark, and they looked absolutely terrifying. He looked thin because he hasn't eaten well or anything. He was starving to death, judging by the noises in his stomach. What noise? Didn't I hear anything? Sakura murmured, wondering if she had missed something. No, the splash of the boat and our conversation in a low voice concealed it. But my hearing is like a dog's. I heard it as clear as water and our conversation. Naruto paused for a moment before muttering something incoherent. Naruto jumped to his feet and grabbed Kakashi's right ankle. Where will we stay so I can locate our sensei? In the guest room, follow me. Tsunami nodded and walked away with Naruto behind. Oh. 2 hours later, everyone was busy. Sakura was brushing her hair while laughing covertly and talking in a low voice. Sasuke, who used to sit on the couch next to the girl, was now sitting on the floor in front of his pink-haired companion, watching Naruto. Kakashi was sitting on the couch with Sakura and talking to his team about what they were going to do. While Tazuna was listening to the man, Naruto was in the kitchen with Tsunami helping her to cook. Suddenly, they heard a scream and then a laugh. Tazuna shook her head as she motioned for Kakashi to continue. In the kitchen, Naruto's laughter died down as he saw Tsunami's horrified look. He was staring at a carton of eggs on the table that Naruto had brought him. Are you okay, Tsunami-chan? No, I'm not, Naruto. Do you know what you just did? She asked, looking at him with pained eyes. Did you make a harmless joke? Naruto asked, starting to feel bad about what he did. Tell me, do you know about our difficult economic situation? And yet, you put all the hard-boiled eggs on me. What am I going to wear now? The woman asked forcefully. Naruto lowered his gaze, scratching the back of his head. I'm sorry. I was trying to cheer you up. Before Tsunami said anything, the blonde guy in front of him pulled a little box out from behind him. He took it when it was offered and opened it. There were half a dozen eggs inside, the same amount I had before. I didn't actually cook your eggs, Naruto said, drawing Tsunami's attention. I just wanted to make you smile. Those are your eggs, the ones I brought and put in the carton after taking yours out. I'm sorry. Tsunami looked at the eggs for a second before putting them down and turning to the younger male. He grimaced when she approached, but relaxed when she hugged him. Thank you, Naruto, for trying to make me smile. Naruto smiled and returned the hug. But as soon as he started to put his hand down his back, they pulled him away and gave him a scolding look. That doesn't mean you get frisky. Naruto pouted, but smiled anyway. Of course, not with the possibility of others entering. I get it. Tsunami blushed, but didn't say anything, knowing that the guy was just joking with her. Yeah, well, go cut those tomatoes for me. You did it, Tsunami-chan. Naruto smiled before grabbing a knife and a cutting board. Oh. Naruto smiled as he placed a plate of food in the center of the table. Everyone already had a piece of baked bread and a bowl of soup. On the plate was what Naruto and Tsunade had prepared, scrambled smoked salmon. It was a creamy scrambled egg over smoked salmon and a flake of whole wheat bread. Come on. Dinner is ready. Naruto shouted towards the room where his team and Tazuna were. It smells good, Naruto. What did you prepare? Kakashi asked as Sasuke dragged him away. A chicken soup with my pieces of homemade bread, salad, and scrambled smoked salmon. Naruto smiled, pointing at each dish he presented. The smoked salmon or the heady? Kakashi smiled as she drooled over the food. Where did you get it? Tazuna asked while sitting on a chair. I pulled him out of the water, Naruto replied simply, and sat down on a chair, just as Tsunami came in. Where's Inari? Tazuna asked and looked at her daughter. He's coming? As soon as he said that, a short, sulking boy came in. His eyes reflected a hidden anger and emptiness, something that a child should not have. He glanced at Naruto, who was still smiling, before glaring at the ground in fury, as he made his way to his seat next to Tazuna. Naruto simply stared at the boy as he ate in silence before fixing his eyes on Kakashi's struggling arms. Sasuke, since you're next to Kakashi-sensei, would you mind feeding him? He can't seem to move. Sasuke looked at Kakashi and sighed. Hey, just think, you can see what he's hiding under that mask of his. Naruto smiled, laughing to himself. Sasuke was more than happy to remember Kakashi's hidden face. He ignored her orders and took off her mask, finding perfectly normal lips. Wow, I was hoping Sensei would have full lips or something, Naruto muttered with a mocking smile. And why the mask, Sensei? Apart from the Sharingan. Kakashi shrugged, unmoved by the fact that the blonde knew about the Sharingan. He used it in the battle against Zabuza, right? Well, as a young man, I always saw my dad using it when he was on duty. He was my idol when I was young, and I always saw him as a mysterious ninja, so I wanted to be like him in everything. Naruto nodded. All right. I understand the reason. From what I've heard about him, he was a good man, until his sad death. Kakashi's eyes hardened for a second as he remembered, but he didn't say anything. Why is that? A little voice whispered. Naruto turned to Inari with curiosity. Why what? Why admire your father? No. The boy tensed up and clenched his fists. Why are you acting like this? Why are you helping us? Naruto stared at the boy while everyone stopped eating. Why not? Inari was silent, although it could be seen that he did not expect a direct answer. You're going to die. By whom? Naruto chuckled, taking a bite out of his piece of bread soaked in broth. Cat and his goons, Inari replied in a serene voice. They will do the same to you as to anyone who opposes them. You can try. Naruto chuckled again, and kept the smile while pointing at him with the bread. Your name is Inari, right? The boy nodded, not understanding where this was going. Naruto chuckled and dipped the bread into the broth, but kept his eyes fixed on the youngest. Every time I hear that name, I like to think that anyone who wears it is like the goddess Inario Kami. Affectionate, strong, and with a will superior to that of others. But you dishonor the name. Inari seemed surprised by the comparison to a goddess, but ignored the insult. Hey, you're sulking here, behaving worse than my partner when he sulks. Sasuke glared at him, but didn't interrupt. You act like your world has collapsed when you have a mother and a grandfather taking care of you. You don't know my life. Inari shouted, interrupting Naruto's speech. You don't know anything about me. I can imagine, Naruto muttered with a forced smile. If what I understand from that broken photo is that you lost someone special or very close. I guess he died at the hands of Gato for trying to help the village, and that you came to resent anyone who wanted to do the same as him. But now I'm going to tell you to shut up and keep your feelings to yourself, or think about what you're doing. I am here because others like you have given up and will not fight. Your father and the few workers he has are trying to help the village, while you just sit there, feeling bad for yourself. Just remember that there is someone in the world who is or has been worse off than you. For example, I grew up without a single family member. I was alone for almost half of my life. Sakura looked at Naruto with a mixture of surprise, amazement and doubt, while Sasuke ignored him and Kakashi stared. Tsunami looked surprised and Tazuna adopted a sad expression. I don't even have a picture or a name of them. They told me that they died during the attack of the QB protecting me, but otherwise, I know nothing. I survived alone on the streets until I finally got some people to take care of me. You have a family and you have love. It makes me angry that people like you are so selfish. Naruto got up, took a stir of smoked salmon, and turned towards the door. Where are you going, Naruto? Kakashi asked from his seat. Rest for a while. I'll be back in a few hours. Naruto opened the door. Maybe. It's almost midnight, a week after Team 7 arrived at Nami. The moon was hovering over us and the stars were shining like little diamonds. Everyone was sleeping at Tazuna's house. Everyone except our young blonde. He was sitting on the sofa, leaning forward, with the moon shining on his shoulders through the window. While he watched the clock ticking towards the next day. He was wearing his uniform, with the mask on his lap and both katanas on his back. Naruto got up when the clock struck the new time. He left a note on the table to warn whoever woke up first that he was going to train far away, in the forest, again. He opened the door quietly and closed it, looking at the moon. He sighed and got ready to put on the mask. Nice night, isn't it, Naruto? Said a voice firm by the door. Naruto turned around, and was surprised to see Kakashi sitting on the ground looking at the moon. His left eye was exposed, and the headband was next to him on the floor. The orange book she used to read was open before her eyes, but she was lazily holding it on her lap. Naruto nodded. Yes, it is, sensei. Where are you going? Kakashi asked as he stood up, grabbing his headband and crutches. Nothing important, Naruto replied, watching his sensei intently. I was ready to knock him out if the case came. Kakashi looked at Naruto as he limped over on his crutches. Are you sure? I don't know if you want me to recite to you what happens if you disobey your superior. Naruto smiled scornfully. I was just going to train. Damn, sensei, you have some problems. Kakashi smiled back at the blonde. If you keep training so early, you will surely get tired. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. If I do it that much, it will turn into muscle memory. If I do it long enough, I'll be able to fight in my sleep. I don't think it works like that. Kakashi chuckled before waving his hand. Okay, go ahead. Just come back for breakfast. Naruto nodded before jumping into the trees and getting away from the house as fast as he could. He put on his mask and cracked his neck. I wish I didn't have to do this. Do what? Kyuubi's muffled voice asked. He acts like he's just some random genin. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. I want to blow everything up without any worries. Even beheading some of them. Don't worry, Naruto-kun. Once we complete the Chunin exams, we won't have to be on this team seriously anymore. Naruto was surprised that becoming Chunin gave him independence. He thought he would have had to stay with his team until he became Honin. Yes, I'm pretty sure that once the exam is over, you will be excused from your usual ninja duties. Kirby paused for a moment before finishing. Or at least I think so. If not, what the hell has all this been for? Good point. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before stopping on a branch. Below him was a young woman with long black hair and brown eyes. She was wearing a salmon-colored kimono and sandals. Naruto jumped up and landed silently on the grass. He stood on tiptoe behind the girl to look over her shoulder. She was picking up leaves and putting them in her basket with rhythm. He gave no sign of noticing it, devoting the blonde to a ridiculous smile. Convenience of the plot. He reached back, pulled an air horn out of nowhere, and pointed it at the sky. 3, 2, 1. The great disturbance of the horn force was heard echoing in the forest as Naruto held the thumb on the tip. The young woman in front of him jumped up and threw senbon at him. He ignored the senbon hitting his jugular, right eye and collarbone as he blew the air horn at a random rate, like Morse code. The girl was stunned when she landed on a branch with 3 more senbon in her hand. He watched in silence as Naruto took out the needles he already had stuck in and threw away the empty can. A cliché event in which the protagonist gets hurt when encountering a beautiful girl in the forest and sneaks up on her. Naruto said to himself, "You make it creepier when you say it that way." It was Naruto-kun. "Who are you?" The girl asked from her perch on a branch. "Me," Naruto repeated, getting a nod. "I am the tamer of demons, the strongest of all men, lover of everything beautiful, and with a pair of 8-paw." Aku blinked with an astonished expression. And she blushed at his remark about women. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see Sensei's." "Where is he?" Naruto asked, appearing over the girl's shoulder. "No eyebrows." "Do you mean Zabuza-sama?" Aku asked, trembling as gloved hands wrapped around her waist. She tried to pull away, but he was holding her tightly. "Yes, him." "Where is he?" Naruto whispered in his ear. "I'm his assistant." "Are you in Naruto Uzumaki?" She shuddered before pulling away as she felt the gloved hand touch her thigh. He lost his balance, slipped off the branch, and fell to the ground. He closed his eyes tightly, but instead of falling on the hard earth, he was in something more comfortable. She opened her eyes slowly and saw the masked face staring at her and his arms hugging her tightly. "Are you okay?" Naruto asked, smiling under his mask. "That one is." "Just follow me," the girl murmured as she stood up and shot out into the trees. Naruto followed her, but zigzagging as he landed on the branches, trunk, and other parts of the trees. "What is the name of a thing as pretty as you?" "Haku." She replied by blushing up to her ears. "Oh, so you're the beautiful ninja hunter from before. How about we go to a quiet place after Gato finishes and dance the boogie boogie?" Naruto chuckled as he saw the girl lose her step, but kept up the speed. Aku remained silent the rest of the way, his face and ears burning intensely. Oh, in the meantime, Danzo looked at a map of the elemental nations in the Okage's office, with Irizen in his chair and Jiraiya leaning over him. On the map, there are 4 red X's and a black circle. So the X's indicate Akatsuki's hideouts, Danzo asked, sitting in a chair in front of the map, and Jiraiya nodded. Jiraiya pointed his finger at the entire map from 10 to 10, as you can see, they are spread out quite evenly. They are in the country of hot water, near Takigakure, the country of rivers, and even in the Tanzaku neighborhood. Then he placed his finger on the great black circle of the country of tears. But most of them reside in AIM. I do not know if the leader has something to do with it, but he is almost never seen. He is revered as a god, and is said to be responsible for his stopping seeing from time to time. Stop the rain, repeated Irizen, amazed at the power of such a man. And in a place named after the rain, that must be very difficult. Danzo nodded to himself. I understand that a man is considered a god for doing that, but that he is not seen by the public. What kind of informant is this giving us? Are they trustworthy? Jiraiya nodded. Ah yes, he is afraid of the leader and what the locals call Angel. She is supposedly his messenger, who arrives with white wings to give orders when it stops raining. Anyway, he has resided in AIM since he was born, but he informs us that if anyone from outside the village comes in, he is always under surveillance. If they pose a threat, they disappear and are never seen again. Can we get something more concrete from the organization? Perhaps his numerical strength. The only thing I've heard about Danzo is that they're nothing we've ever seen before. Yeah, well. Jiraiya took out a manila folder and threw it on the desk. What's in there is what they gave my informant one night. He never saw who I was, but what scares me is the content. Danzo opened the folder and found a blonde man with fluorescent green eyes and light skin, with greenish reflections. His ears were pointed, and a malicious smile adorned his lips with a sadistic glee that only a man could achieve. He was wearing an armored suit with green spots, and a strange futuristic glider floating in the air. That's Orochimaru, Jiraiya muttered, with fury reflected in his words. His name is now Green Goblin, and he is the main scientist of Akatsuki. Irizen was silent as he took the photo of his student. He just stared with the pipe in his mouth. There are 5 others and one, a beast. Jiraiya mumbled the last part, not knowing what to call something. Danzo glanced through the papers. A girl named X-23, capable of ripping bones out of her knuckles, but stronger than the toughest metal known. Then, a girl named Kimura, who is also X-23's caretaker. He is invulnerable to attacks and can control density. The perfect person to combat X-23's powers. A man named Sabretooth, able to strengthen his nails and cut down whole trees. His biography said that he belonged to an unknown clan with a wild and animal nature. Then, the spider duo. Both beings are strange symbionts that were found on the moon, which surprised Danzo, since no one had been there. The first was a black being named Venom, who adheres to most surfaces, has limited camouflage, and enhanced strength. The second was a red and elegant being called Carnage. Unlike his companion, who can exhale poison through his mouth and has a long tongue, Carnage had the same strong fingernail power as Sabretooth, but with greater speed, strength, agility, and endurance. Finally, there was the Beast. Predator 10 was a huge being made of non-toxic mercury, toxic saliva, accelerated healing, sharp claws and teeth, and increased strength and speed. This creature was undoubtedly dangerous in and of itself. So, someone from inside is trying to prepare us, Danzo said after a while, observing each of those present. We need to know who and when this organization is going to start attacking Viju. We must not allow them to take over a single Hinchiriki. But how can we protect them if none of the other villages trust us or each other? Irizen asked from his silent place. The Chunin exams, Danzo replied with a serious voice, and his gaze fixed on his friend. Defeat all the villages that have ninjas. But tell them how we will pay their shinobi expenses to our village. We need to get the village cage so we can talk about this mess. They won't come, Jiraiya interrupted, crossing his arms. Kumo's father doesn't trust the Hinchiriki in his village unless they have a large team. Iwa has lost contact with her 2 Hinchiriki, Hans and Rossi. Suna has her Hinchuriki out there, doing missions way above Genin. I heard Taki has his Hinchuriki. Hinchuriki living safely, taking care of his big tree. But Kiri's Hinchuriki are another story. His cage, Yagura, who also possesses the three tails, is exterminating the clans that possess any kind of lineage. His other Hinchuriki, Utakata, is on the side of the rebellion, but wishes for this to end without Yagura's death. Then we will convene a cage summit, Danzo replied. Send our new ninja with our letters so they don't get intercepted. And Ruzan inhaled his pipe and exhaled. When Team 7 comes back, we will. Suddenly, Jiraiya let out a giggle. Irison and Danzo looked at him expectantly. There is a disturbance in the force. Naruto looked around as he waited on the ceiling alcove, over a window that overlooked the room that Aku and Zabuza were occupying. Inside there was a bed, on which Zabuza was sitting with his back against the wall. And a futon on the floor. A chest of drawers with a lamp was placed near the bedside, next to a glass of water. Kubikibicho was next to the chest of drawers, polished and clean, despite the amount of spilled blood. The door opened, and he saw Aku with an expressionless face. She closed the door quietly behind her, shortening the distance between her and Zabuza. The man watched her in silence and felt confused when he opened the window. All right, you can come in. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Aku stared at the cool outside, while Abusa looked between her and the window. Who are you waiting for, Aku? Aku was silent for a few seconds before answering. He took a silent step back when the door slammed open, revealing Gato and his two bodyguards. They were former samurai who dedicated themselves to the mercenary after the death of their lord in the land of snow. Aku leaned back in the chair near the dressing table and crossed his hands on his lap. That's why he didn't come in. He felt them approaching when I entered. Zabuza, Cat ordered, catching the man's attention. When are you going to take care of those Konoha brats and the bridge builder? I want it before the end of this week. Zabuza looked at him with a steely gaze before sighing. I will do it when I recover. I'll be a few hours. Then I'm leaving. Cat smiled maliciously and nodded. Then he turned his attention to the young man who was still in the same place. Now, as your master is still recovering, I ask you to dine with me. I will have the chefs prepare any dish you want. I have a dress for you to wear when you cool off. Get back, ugly, it's mine. A cheeky young voice shouted from outside, startling Aku. Zabuza sighed at the sound of the familiar voice. He was stumped before pointing out the window. Who's there? Come and see me before I send my guards. Shit, said the voice before appearing in the room. Naruto was standing next to Aku's chair, his hands resting on the handle of his chair, full of chakra, charged in small calibers 9 mm in diameter and 51 mm long. With the amount of chakra I had, I was maxed out at 10. Who are they? Gato asked, as his bodyguards grabbed the hilts of their katanas. I demand your name. Naruto smiled under his mask, leaving a creepy expression, and bowed his head as he unbuckled the belt holding the chakra gun. He pulled it out and fired 2 shots at each of the bodyguards, piercing their hearts and lungs as they pounced on their swords. They flew back from power. Of the calibers, one landed against the wall and the other in the hallway, but both bled profusely. Naruto kept his right hand pointed at Gato, while he sheathed the other and grabbed his katana. For Madpal. Your personal coconut. Cat turned around and ran to the door, but another caliber came out. Shot, this time seeing it go through his chest. He fell forward, and could only see the horrified expressions of the other mercenaries, who heard the loud bang of the strange weapons. Help, Naruto smiled smugly and supported his right hand, which was shaking violently from the impact of his chakra modified, and brought the bottom of the mask to his mouth. He bent down and captured Aku's lips with his, guiding them while the girl stared at him in amazement. He pulled away and smiled, putting the mask back in place. I'll be right back. I'm going to take care of the rest of the garbage. Naruto ran into the living room, his 2 swords in his hands, ready for the chaos he would unleash at dawn. The samurai and mercenaries who were in the corridors searched for their weapons. But none of them were ready when Naruto teleported in front of the highest-ranking member and cut off his head with a slash. Clean. Everything was silent, Only the breeze and short breaths could be heard. Naruto smiled mischievously, and the next 5 seconds were a haze. In the first second, Naruto advanced towards the next man with the left katana held high and the right one back for a strong lunge. The next second, Naruto executed a long vertical slash to the chest of one of his targets, and the second one pierced his throat with the other sword. During this process, the neck of the first dead man began to shed a torrent of blood that covered the other side of the room, and everyone who was in the first rose. In the third second, everyone realized the situation and prepared to attack his killer. Naruto, moving one of the corpses in front of a spear that was almost stuck in his side, used his right katana to cut out the eyes of one of the men, leaving him blind. In the fourth second, the blind mercenary was brandishing his sword, striking those around him. Naruto replaced his left katana with his chakra weapon and fired 2 quick shots at the heads of 3 mercenaries. At the last second, Naruto used the rest of his chakra cannons and killed the last 5 enemies. They were thrown down the stairs and knocked down the others who were climbing. The other runner had recovered from the fright and was charging at the masked blonde. The first rows carried spears in the hope of attacking him to death. However, before they could reach it, the blades of their spears broke and their bearers stopped and leaned forward. As their bodies fell, with a zenbun in the middle of the head, Naruto turned to see Aku without his dress and in his ninja hunter costume. "I told you that you will relax, right?" Naruto asked sarcastically, not caring if she stayed in the room. "Zabuza asked me to help you," Aku replied quickly, nervously, provoking laughter in the room she came out of. "You didn't, and you know it," barked Zabuza, laughing. "You were just worried about your little sweetheart." Aku stirred and trembled as he felt Naruto's hand slide up to the nape of his neck, gently caressing it. "I'm glad to know what you care," he wooed her before taking his hand away from her neck. He reached out his hand to his side before pulling out of nowhere a weirder version of the strange projectile he had earlier. A big red boat appeared at his back, and a small black tube-like piece with a hose connected from the boat to the tube. He grabbed the tube and smiled maliciously. "Time to warm up." Naruto pulled the trigger, and, before the group of mercenaries could react, a jet of orange fire erupted from the nozzle of the strange weapon, which easily caused serious injuries. The others just turned around to run away, but they didn't run with luck. Naruto sighed, relaxed, keeping his finger on the trigger as he moved forward. He took one look at his companion and saw her simply standing, watching him in amazement. "Do you like what you see?" Naruto asked coquettishly as he stopped his constant stream of flames and turned to the other end of the hallway before starting again. He heard a laugh from Zabuza, followed by "You look like an idiot." Later, 0640. Naruto sighed as he took off his mask. He was in a charred room in the basement, with charred bodies and smashed furniture. He looked around. His right arm was missing by a stroke of luck, but now it was the brown stain on the wall. Naruto found his arm, grabbed it, and abruptly put it back in its corresponding place. Zabuza entered the room, whistling as she looked around. He paid attention to the boy's murmurs and watched as the arm was joined by inhuman means. "Good job, Rubio." Then he walked to the only door in the room, locked from the inside. "I don't think you have any way of getting in." Naruto smiled at the man and cracked his knuckles. Almost as if he was going to do something cool, he just grabbed his right chakra weapon and fired where the knob would be. "That was my last caliber." Zabuza nodded and slowly opened the door to look inside. He almost vomited when the smell and the contents of the room revealed it. There was a torture room inside. Cages hung from the walls and ceiling. Inside, badly injured and recognizable bodies. On the ground, large cages for dangerous animals with reinforced bars. Inside, there were women and men of all ages. Girls and boys, from the age of 14 to the age of 30, were better cared for. But some were dead or dying from an unknown disease or infection. The smell must be coming from dead bodies in hanging cages and from infections. Naruto grunted as he looked inside. "I would give my life for a Shinigami to bring Gato back to life, only to torture him 4 days without rest." Zabuza hung to one side, emptying what little was left in his stomach. Naruto quietly entered and headed for the door. The men and women didn't even move, their eyes just stared at him lifelessly. He almost wanted to cry and punish those responsible, but he couldn't, because he had already killed everyone. He looked to the side and saw another door with a one-way window. He quickly ripped the metal door off its hinges before heading towards her. Zabuza pulled himself together and entered the room. He approached the metal bars and gestured to the women inside. "Come on, get out of there." His voice was clear, as if he was about to vomit again, but he was trying his best to contain it. "We're not here to hurt you." Naruto heard the sound of feet and stared at the closed door. Staring blankly, he slammed the door with a fierce kick and growled as he heard some screams. He slowly entered the eerie white, hospital-like room and observed the group of scientists. A woman was at the front of the group and was pointing a cradle at him and shaking. Naruto looked at the woman with disgust. "Come out now." The woman let go of the cradle and scared when Naruto's voice echoed on the polished walls. One by one, they left the room, not daring to look Naruto in the eyes, which grew thinner and acquired. They gave a blood-orange hue. "Zabuza?" Naruto barked so loudly that the older man heard him. "Keep an eye on these people. Make sure none of them move or it will kill them." He heard a grunt of confirmation, a scream from one of the scientists, and a thud. Naruto ignored him and continued down the hall. Observing the examination rooms, where the bodies lay on a table and had been opened. After about 15 rooms, the examination rooms changed their appearance, and instead of dismembered bodies, they were now connected to machines pumping liquids or submerged in a 3-meter glass dome. With a green liquid, Naruto felt more and more disgusted to see these people being experienced and a growing darkness enveloping his heart. He took a deep breath before reaching the last door, locked and with the knob unscrewed. He grabbed one of his katanas, opened the door, and was met by darkness. Once his eyes got used to it, Naruto could vaguely see the silhouette of someone lying on a bed with a sealed paper bandage. And machines connected. Naruto pulled out a flashlight from somewhere and shone it with the light of the only inhabitant. A sudden beep was heard in one of the few machines, while another contained a clear liquid labeled morphine. Naruto slowly approached the bound man with an impassive look. He took a look at the clipboard and saw the name Kimimaro Kagaya. "Who are you?" The man spoke from his bonds, his voice was sickly. "It doesn't matter who I am," Naruto replied. "What I want to know is, what is this place?" "Orochimaru's laboratory," Kimimaro replied without hesitation or moving. "Pay monthly to use an underground facility of the cat building." "What's going on here?" Naruto asked, looking at one of the papers on the inhabitant's body. Kimimaro was silent for a second before sighing. "It depends on the person. This facility is small and played a role in the science of Orochimaru. He experimented with orphan inhabitants or stolen people from all nations. Whether it was for his personal goal of immortality, the limit of the human body, or simply the knowledge of the gifted." "How do you know all this?" Naruto asked, turning his attention back to the young man. "Looks like you've been blindfolded for a while." "True," Kimimaro replied. "But being Orochimaru's most trusted tool means knowing everything about his works. But when my illness weakened my body, he cared nothing more than to learn as much as possible about it without killing me. When I die, my body will be split open like the rest of the people here." Naruto nodded, took off the blindfold, and watched as the older teenager opened his eyes. "Then get up and go. If you really have no connection with Orochimaru anymore, then come with me or go your own way. It matters little to me." Naruto turned around after breaking the safety restraints that held his arms and legs. He walked down the hall, ignoring the footsteps that followed him. As he entered, he saw everyone except the woman from earlier. He was shaking, and his clothes were stained from the bodies in front of him. Zabuza shrugged her shoulders with a smile at the inquisitive look. "They got away." Naruto frowned and walked over the bodies, stepping on them to pass, before stopping in front of the woman. He grabbed her by the neck and lifted her up. She clutched his hands in a desperate attempt to breathe. "Now, your only chance starts now. What have you been doing here?" The girl choked and stuttered weakly as she tried to speak. Naruto squeezed her a little more before releasing her, taking his hand to his side as he watched her collapse on the floor with coughing fits. We were researching immortality," the woman said with all her might, tears running down her face. "Orochimaru found ancient tomes and wanted us to do experiments to implement them." "And did you do it with innocent people?" Naruto asked with a frown. The woman chuckled, slightly but faintly. "No one is innocent anymore, murderer. And I can say the same about you." Naruto snarled and decapitated the woman with a clean chop. Her gaze turned to one of amazement before the light left her, and she fell to the ground, followed by her body. Zabuza looked at the boy and patted him on the back. "Everything will be fine, Uzumaki. The others are resting upstairs. Aku saved most of them, but some of the older ones died." Naruto nodded before leaving. "Have fun, Zabuza. I have to inform my team." "Hey, you brat," Zabuza shouted as he approached. "Don't think that you will abandon Aku and me so easily. We will return to Konoha with you." Naruto looked at the man, but then smiled. "I'm glad to know that. Just take care of others before you come." Zabuza nodded and let the boy walk away. Naruto ran long and silent to Tezuna's house, still thinking about what Orochimaru did. The rotting corpses of innocents, the lifeless faces of the survivors. "It's disgusting," Naruto growled in his head, his stomach churning again. "I'm going to get revenge, so help me Kami." He arrived at Tezuna's house, where everyone was eating. Naruto slid out the window into his team's room and closed it silently. She grabbed a change of clothes, a black tank top and black sweatpants, and headed to the only bathroom in the house. After closing the door, he opened the shower before removing his shirt from his head. She threw him in the shower along with his mask and silently watched as the water washed the reddish blood off his suit. He sighed and brought his hand to the edge of his pants when a gasp stunned him, and he turned to see who it was. Tsunami was standing at the door, with one hand over her mouth and her eyes wide and horrified. Naruto narrowed his eyes in amazement before looking at himself in the mirror with his back to him. On him were the scars he got while fighting in the cat hiding place. They would heal in a few days or a week, but they still looked horrible. Naruto sighed before walking towards the door until he stopped in front of it. Silently, he took the woman's hand with both of them and held it to reassure her. "I'll be down for dinner in a bit, Tsunami." Naruto closed the door without looking back, took off his bloody pants, and got into the shower. She took the bar of soap and examined her skin for a second before washing. Afterwards, she started washing her hair to get rid of the blood left from removing the mask. Naruto let himself fall forward against the wall and turned up the temperature. He took his mask and continued to clean the roughest areas where the blood had hardened. He did the same with his pants and shirt before turning off the tap and leaving. He put on his shirt and tracksuit before opening the door to the hallway. Letting the dense fog of steam dissipate, he quietly entered and unzipped his backpack. He stuffed the suit into his backpack before a cough excused him. She turned to look at the white-haired man before zipping it shut. Then he broke into a smile, light-hearted that denoted fun. "Good morning, Kakashi-sensei. I missed breakfast." Kakashi shook his head and walked towards Naruto before sitting down. The two fell silent before the older man spoke. "What happened?" Naruto looked at him confused and his smile dimmed. "What? Not today. The 2 months you were away," Kakashi clarified. "You graduated by learning the shadow clone technique, but for more than a month, you did not appear in the village. What happened to you?" Naruto leaned back against the wall and stared at the white-haired man. "You shouldn't ask questions you don't want to know." "I want to know," Kakashi assured, staring at the blonde. "I need to know." Naruto leaned his head against the wall and closed his eyes. "What would you do with this information? Tell him, or to the Okage? To the rest of the village? To the other Jounin? What would you do with what I am?" Kakashi kept silent, not thinking about that. "I just wanted to know what his sensei's son was doing." "No, I don't know what I would do. I guess I'd just think about it." Naruto was silent for a few seconds before standing up and stretching. "I'll tell you another time. In private." Kakashi nodded and stood up. "Maybe." Kakashi rolled his eyes and followed the blonde down the stairs. "What did you do before? Do you want the real answer?" Naruto joked, but he knew the man nodded. Let's say I have new friends and you have less problems. Naruto knew the man would understand, or at least he hoped so, but he headed to the kitchen where the rest of the family and the team were. Tsunami had his eyes fixed on his plate and only gave the blonde one look before looking away. Naruto sat down in his usual place and started eating his breakfast dish. He looked at the young man in front of him, who was watching him with an indecipherable gaze. Naruto smiled smugly as he took a bite. "So, brat, where have you been?" Tazuna asked while scratching the back of her neck. The absolute silence was starting to bother him, taking out the garbage. Naruto chuckled as he answered the question. He could feel joy for what he had done to the tycoon, but it ended too quickly for his taste. "Now it will be easier for you to build that bridge, I assure you." Tazuna stared, surprised, at the information he had been given. "You don't mean?" "Yes," Naruto replied with his smile, waving his hand, "you can thank me later." "Thank you, it's not even a fraction of the gratitude I feel for you," Tazuna said. "To tell the truth, I was just disappointed that I couldn't see Kat's expression when he was killed. There is nothing in this world that can pay my debt." Naruto shook his head as his companions looked around in confusion. "Don't even mention it. Just give me the deed of your village and we will be even." Tazuna was stunned and Tsunami looked up surprised. "What?" Tsunami whispered. "What's the matter?" Sakura asked, looking at Tazuna, Tsunami, and finally her sensei. "What do you mean, sensei?" "He killed Gato this morning," Kakashi clarified, surprising his students. "Now, he wants the village to be his at the cost of freeing it." "Are you serious?" Sasuke scoffed, not believing the story. "How can the dobe kill Gato and his army? And what would he do with a village besides killing it?" Naruto was laughing while resting his head on his hand and looking at the family. "I don't want to control them, but to protect them. If the word gets out that a powerful ninja is protecting them, they won't have this problem again. I only ask for about 12,000 rivers a month. How would you protect them by yourself?" Sakura asked, horrified by the idea of a village being left in the hands of the Academy's undead. "Who said I was alone?" Naruto asked, fixing his gaze on Sakura. "I have friends and allies who trust me as much as I trust them. I'd rather have this village protected than abandoned, don't you think?" "What friends?" Sasuke asked sarcastically. "You were alone at the academy. Who would be your friends? And do you happen to know my life?" Naruto asked casually. "Stop it," Kakashi interjected before the insults started. "May the deed reach Konoha, and may the whole village protect it. And share my battle loot." Naruto joked. "No, I'm fine without help." Tazuna looked at her daughter before nodding. "We will give you the scripture, if what you say is true. What do you think about Zabuza Momoki and her partner?" Naruto asked, catching even Kakashi by surprise. "They will be the first to protect you after arriving at the village and registering under my name. They will become a kind of vassals. It will take at least 1 or 2 months." "Vassal?" Kakashi asked. "How do you know about vassals? This system has not been used since before the formation of the hidden villages. I've made good use of my time." "During the 2 months I was away," Naruto replied. "A vassal is someone who provided military support to his lord, which would be me, and even protection when the moment required it. In return, he would get benefits such as land or supplies. On Earth, he could establish his own power, called a fief, although it would not be necessary." "Why would that be?" Tazuna asked, intrigued with the idea. "Because they will use this village from time to time. They can do whatever I want with her and protect her on my behalf." Naruto smiled at the end and sighed. "Well, unless I need them for something. If your people want to learn how to fight, I guess they could train them." Tazuna nodded and leaned back. "That sounds well thought out. How long have you been thinking about this?" "Since my fight with Zabuza on the way here." Naruto's laughter was full of joy. "Kat's money will be split in half between him and me, and I'll make sure you're well taken care of." "Then that doesn't make you any better than Kat." Inari shouted angrily and got up from his seat abruptly, ignoring the thud that had fallen to the floor. "You saved us, but in return you want to own our village. You're as bad as a cat. Kasen and Hiji-san are cowards and idiots for letting you take the writing." In an instant, Inari was sprawled on the floor, and Naruto had risen, his chair thrown back. He had a frown and blood-orange eyes, and his hand was raised, pointing a finger at the boy. "Never," Naruto growled under his breath as Inari looked up, shocked and scared. "You talk about your mother and grandfather like that. What makes you jump down their throats? They have worked to keep you safe and the village as a ray of hope, but you just complain. It makes me sick. Do you think you have it wrong?" Naruto asked with a truly demonic tone. "You have no idea how much you have. Today I found a scary laboratory with men and women, even children, crammed into cages and hung from hooks. While experimenting with them, they have died from infections, malnutrition, and simply because their will was broken. The smell is nothing like what has come out, and it is something I will never forget. All in the name of one man's greed for immortality." And Nari was shocked to see a different side of El Rubio. Naruto had a few tears running down his cheeks, but he wiped them away furiously. "I have learned from experience that there are others who are going through more difficult times than you. But when I met you, I felt compassion for your loss. But when I found out how you act, I can only feel compassion for the man you lost, and for your family. You are a despicable boy who has given up and wants others to be as miserable as you." And Nari lowered her gaze in shame, unable to look at Naruto. You just couldn't forgive yourself," Naruto finished, no matter what words the younger one was going to use. "I feel sorry for you, but you have a mother and a grandfather who love and take care of you. Learn to reciprocate with that gesture. Tazuna is already too old to be the man of the house." Naruto held out his hand to the boy with a gentle and kind smile. "Now get up and ask for forgiveness." And Nari took his hand and turned to his family. He remained silent, with his head down and his fists clenched. Suddenly, he pounced on his mother and cried on her chest, surprising the young woman. "I'm sorry, Ka-chan. I didn't mean all that. I'm really sorry about the way I've been behaving." "Oh, it's okay, honey," Tsunami said as she cried too. "I love you very much." When Inari left his mother to hug his grandfather, everyone turned to see Naruto shocked. Naruto bowed to Tsunami and Tazuna. "I'm sorry I hit your son. I didn't see any other way to get to him." Tsunami got up and hugged Naruto, crying on his chest. He put his arms around her and comforted her as best he could. He rested his head on hers, looked at Kakashi and smiled. "I think the impervious saint would have research material for his book if he were here," he articulated before pulling the girl away from life. From his chest and wipe away his tears. 0. Or, late that night, 22:25, or 0. Naruto was lying in his room, provided by Tsunami and Tazuna. He was only wearing his underpants, and the blanket partially covered his disheveled body. He sighed and rolled over before closing his eyes to sleep. About 5 minutes later, he heard the door creak as it opened and closed, and footsteps approaching. The blankets behind him lifted as he saw someone climbing in, and, after an uncomfortable second, a trembling hand reached out around him. Naruto opened his eyes before turning to look at Tsunami's motionless face, with his eyes closed, and turned around. He pulled her to him and put his arms around her. Tsunami rested his head on Naruto's chest and took a deep breath. He noticed how tense she was in his embrace and thought about correcting him. He dragged her until her face. She stood in front of his and his eyes opened, meeting with a blue light. He leaned over and gave her a quick kiss first, before leaning over to give her another. Tsunami rested her hand on Naruto's cheek and kissed him back, surprised by her own actions. The blonde pulled away before giving her another kiss. Tsunami put her head back on her chest and closed her eyes with a smile. 0. Or, a week later, 15 or 0. Tazuna's family, Team 7, Zabuza and Aku said goodbye to the finished bridge. On a big door, Tori, and there was a sign that said, "From the New Hope," a name that Tazuna pondered for a while. At first, he wanted to call it Big Naruto Bridge, but the blonde refused, explaining that he did not want anything to bear his name. "I never thought I would be on the same side as the copycat ninja," Zabuza mused as he crossed his arms. "I would have expected a big battle at least. Some other even." "Me too." Kakashi nodded. Naruto ignored them and concentrated on Tazuna. "Take care of people, Tazuna. I trust them to you, so don't make me regret it." Tazuna let out a laugh. "Don't worry, Gaki, I'll take care of them." Just make sure you take care of this village." Tazuna handed the village deed to Naruto, who took it and put it in his red vest pocket. Naruto then reached to his left, where no one was, and pulled out a large sack that jingled as he moved. He handed it to the astonished man. "That should be about 120,065 Ryo. That should help you. Where did you get that kind of money from?" Sasuke asked, stepping ahead of Kakashi. "Zabuza and I split the cat treasure. Jewelry, gold, gems, and Ryo. They gave me 2,720,966, me as my half. I can take care of you for years." Naruto smiled as he patted his pocket. "Anyway, have fun, Tazuna." Naruto turned to Inari and crouched down at his height. Naruto smiled as he reached back, pulling out a knife with a 30-centimeter blade and a 15-centimeter handle, and putting it in the boy's hand, holding it with both hands. "Protect your village while I'm not, okay, little man." And Nari wiped her tears and nodded furiously. "I will." Naruto smiled and patted the boy on the head. "He's a tough man." Naruto turned to Tsunami, who looked at him. She was gawping to say something, but Naruto just hugged her. Before she got used to it, Naruto kissed her before leaving. "Be careful, everyone." Orochimaru has seen and learned many things in his life. He learned that only the strongest deserve to live and rule the world, while the weak were expendable and mere pawns of the will of the strongest. That's why he left Konoha. I couldn't be tied to that twisted monarchy. He thought about going to the ancient Uzumaki ruins, but refrained. The island was haunted, and the scavengers who went there never returned. Even the ninjas he sent to investigate never returned. This makes him suspect that the will of the Uzumaki has not yet died, and that he represents a dangerous presence for those who are not welcome. But that was of no importance when he found out about Akatsuki and his goals. He devoted most of his available resources to finding them. Despite its secretive nature, he had no trouble finding the organization in the Land of Tears, a small country devastated by the 3 Shinobi Wars. They were led by a man named Peen, who killed Anzo, and a group of renegade S-rank ninjas. Contacting them was the hard part. Once in a megacure, he had a hard time finding information about the whereabouts of the group. But after a lot of asking, a man whom he knew and respected contacted him. Sasori from the Red Sand. Orochimaru had heard a lot about the man who decimated such staggering amounts that the deserts of Suna were awash with blood. He could befriend a man with such power. He was taken to the facilities used by the organization and met with the other members. He knew them all as notorious ninjas who had abandoned their villages, but 2 of them were the only ones he never thought he would see. Konan and Yeiko. They had both grown up a lot and had not become anything, even if Orochimaru had thought about it. After all, Hirai had already trained them. But no, they turned out to be lethal ninjas who killed Anzo and created the most organized and deadly missing ninja criminal group in history. Talking to them was brief and easy. Yeiko said they needed a scientist, and Orochimaru was the best in the shinobi lands. He was to help Madara, the real leader of the group, to create super ninjas with extraordinary abilities. With a large monthly funding, Orochimaru continued his research on the abnormalities in the cellular structures of certain people. Some people whose blood was, by definition, stronger and more resistant. Orochimaru thought, looking at the lightning daimyo's structure, that it was an attribute of the royal blood. That made them stronger than the average human. But when examining one of his patients, he also presented this anomaly. He had to go through all his notes and history and found out that he had no connection with royal blood. It was a revelation. Orochimaru vigorously took and examined his test subjects and loyal followers. Of the thousands of test subjects he had, 1/3 did not present this anomaly. More than 3/4 of his doctors, and even more of his ninjas in another, had this strange structure. How had this been hidden for so long? Orochimaru had wondered about it for the next few days. His next step, after conversing with the rest of Akatsuki, was to extract the power from these cells. After months of experimenting with everything she knew, she found a breakthrough with her most fanatical ninja, Kimura. She started by showing resistance to some attacks that would normally have hurt a person. He soon became able to control the density of weapons. She was summoned by Akatsuki after to test their skill on the battlefield, where even a team of Akatsuki members would have difficulties. He completely destroyed the daimyo of Sound and his army of 100 samurai while they were on their way to Konoha to discuss political matters. This produced two extraordinary results. The first was that the Sound was completely under Orochimaru's control. He used this opportunity to increase his military power. He trained men and women from 6 to 15 years old in intense regiments that would perfect them. The second, after the death of the Sound daimyo, his daughter was found in his mansion. What intrigued Orochimaru was that the girl had her cell intertwined with her bones, specifically with her hands. After many experiments, Orochimaru discovered that the girl could extend her bones through the knuckles. He assigned Kimura as his caretaker due to the sharpness of her bones. She was just the beginning of the coming future. Orochimaru looked up as the door opened and saw Madara enter. The snake man flashed a disgusting smile as the man sat in the chair next to him. "What brings you to my laboratory, Madara? You rarely visit where all your armies are." Madara leaned forward while resting her hands on the table. "I came here to find out why you are going to invade Konoha. I thought you had forgotten about that little detail of yours." Orochimaru chuckled as he scratched his blonde hair. "Ah, but it will make our life easier. With my old sensei dead, Konoha will be rendered useless and vulnerable. During the attack, many ninjas will die defending it, and will suffer the same fate. During their rest period, if I fail to destroy the village completely, you can send some Akatsuki. And bring the hosts of the Kyuubi and the Ichibi." Madara leaned back as his only visible eye stared at Orochimaru. He got up without a word and went to the door. "I'll leave it to you then. Don't disappoint me." Orochimaru smiled as Kabuto walked through the door. "What's the word, Kabuto?" Kabuto bowed to him. "The participating auto teams are on their way, and X-23 is with them. They should arrive in Konoha in 5 days. Orochimaru smiled maliciously. "What about our little sand demon? Is she bloodthirsty?" "More than ever," Kabuto replied, fighting his disgust. "Fine." Orochimaru laughed to himself and got up from his desk. "Now, I want you to go to Konoha with your team and register for the Chunin exams. You need to keep an eye on Sasuke Uchiha and make sure he passes the tests. Earn their trust however you want." Kabuto bowed his head. "Of course, Orochimaru. I'll do it right now." "Fine. Then, go ahead." Oyu, Konoha. Meanwhile, Naruto gently stroked Aku's lower back, his hand already under his shirt, and smiled smugly when the girl shuddered with a silent moan. He had been in the village doing this for 5 minutes, and followed Kakashi to the Okage Tower to inform him. "If you speak louder, they will start to hear you." What would Zabuza think? "It's hard," Chiyoaku, suppressing a groan. "Your touch. Does it feel good to just pat yourself on the back?" Naruto smiled when she nodded, distrusting his voice. Naruto smiled smugly and stopped stroking her, getting a small moan of protest. He pulled her close to his waist and came close to her ear. "Wait a minute. If this is good, you have no idea how much more they can do." Aku sighed and leaned her head against his, knees bent. Naruto chuckled, picked her up, and caught up with the rest of his team. Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi looked at him suspiciously, while Abusa sneered, earning a withering look of Aku. "Oh, I didn't know you would become like this, Aku dear." Zabuza chuckled underhandedly before giving Naruto a lukewarm look. "Stay away from my daughter." Naruto smiled as he returned her gaze before making the shape of a chakra gun. "Are you sure you want to start this kind of battle?" Zabuza hesitated and regained his usual disinterested expression. Naruto smiled and made his way through his companions. They arrived at the Okage building a minute later, and the group went up the stairs to the mission room. Aku was still in his arms despite his protests. "Hey man!" Naruto shouted as he kicked the door open, earning Aku a start. He smiled as he entered and awkwardly greeted Danzo, who was sitting next to the window. "I guess you're on a mission, huh?" Danzo chuckled when he saw the blushing girl in the blonde man's arms. "And I see you did more than just a C-rank mission." "I wouldn't call it a C-rank mission." Naruto chuckled and headed towards Zabuza, alerting the two elders, but neither moved towards their weapons. "I'll let Kakashi tell you about it, since he's the sensei." Kakashi scratched the side of his face as he felt Irizen's withering gaze and Danzo's amused one. "Well, to summarize, first we met the Demon Brothers. I was going to test my team to see if they could handle Chunnin's rogue ninja, something Naruto handled superbly. After crossing the water towards the village limits, we met Zabuza Momoki. He and Naruto clashed, but they made a secret deal that, fortunately, benefited us. They faked the defeat so that Zabuza could escape and live, although I think that without Naruto, we wouldn't have won or even survived. We went ahead and protected Tazuna while I was weak and incapacitated. A week before the bridge was finally finished, Naruto left home to meet Zabuza. I don't know if it was planned or not, but he mysteriously massacred Gato and all his mercenaries. We left when the New Hope Bridge was finally built. Zabuza and Aku accompanied us. Irisina felt, although he was annoyed by Kakashi's recklessness. Did you take advantage of this moment and at least teach Sasuke and Sakura a lesson? Kakashi instantly turned pale and rubbed the back of his neck. Well, not much. I taught them the tree climbing exercise and the basics of teamwork, but nothing more. Danzo's mockery turned into a giggle as he shook his head. Kakashi, I thought you would be the first to understand that teamwork is not taught, but learned. Teamwork is only understood when it is really necessary, or if not, it is a false hope. It's a wonder that Sasuke and Sakura are still alive. Hey, I was the one who did all the work on this mission. Sasuke argued, glaring at Danzo. What makes the Dobe so special as to be the one who survives? There are too many to list, Uchiha. Danzo smiled back at him, her only visible eye looking at him pitifully. He just has the will and the drive to succeed. But let's continue with what we were talking about. Kakashi, you have the order to find Sakura a medical ninja master and Sasuke a humility master. I think Jiraiya would love to do it for you since you are incompetent. Insufficient. Kakashi repeated, surprised, as if he had been punched in the stomach. I just wanted to work firm below, to create a solid foundation for them to learn. Then you will teach Sasuke humility and sea-level or lower ninja skills. That means nothing about Chidori, Irizen replied, setting his pipe down on the desk. Chunin exams are coming up and we are organizing them this year. You have a break to train and prepare. Everyone but Naruto can leave. After everyone left, Irizen turned his attention to Zabuza. Nice to meet you, Momoki. I hope you enjoy your stay, but you and your Prit-G will have two options. One is more enjoyable than the other, and it's something we're doing. What is that? Zabuza asked before Naruto threw something on the desk, not disappointing Aku. When he looked closely, he saw that it was a mask like Naruto's, but orange and blue. You will join the Project 10th program, along with Aku. And you will be subjected to enhancements to your genome, Danzo said, watching as the man picked up the mask. The result is different for each participant, but you will receive a secret identity that you will use in public. It will have to last a few weeks, since you won't have such a busy schedule as Naruto's. Wait, that's why he was able to do all that. Zabuza looked surprised as he looked at the mask. You've been transformed. Not mutated. We prefer the term power transformation, Danzo said as he pulled out 2 sheets of paper. We don't do anything to your cell. We only apply the missing parts that remain dormant and separated from the rest. We have a vague idea of what everything is, but we do not know why or how we develop these things. When do we start? Zabuza asked as she took the paper and wrote her name. Aku did the same, but his was sloppy, as Naruto did not disappoint her. Naruto smiled and turned around to head for the door. See you later. Aku and I have time to spend together. Wait, Naruto, we have another mission for you, Irizen shouted as he pulled out a scroll. Naruto sighed and turned around to go back to the desk. We want you to go to Kiri and give this to Mizukage. Zabuza's eyes widened. What's on that scroll? An invitation to the Cage Summit and the Chunin exams, Irizen replied, handing the scroll to Naruto. Get there as quickly as possible and come back. You should arrive a day before the exams if you hurry. Why are you communicating with that monster? Zabuza growled. It has been the nightmare of everyone who is not like them. It's the reason why Aku's mother is not here. I'm sorry if you feel that way, but I should at least talk to her. There is more to it than rebellion, Irizen replied, as he and Danzo stood up. Now, follow Danzo, and he will take you to your temporary home. Naruto, good luck. Naruto smiled before making a mocking greeting, and let Aku get up. She kissed him on the cheek, and ran her hands down his sides, playfully. I'll be back before you know it, and we'll continue our little session. Aku was left red-faced, wishing he had had the mask on. It didn't help that Zabuza started laughing covertly. Kirigakure, 3 days later, Oh, Naruto nodded to Kiri's guard, and walked over to her. Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm looking for the whereabouts of the Mizukage. I have a diplomatic message from Kanawagakure. The woman nodded and turned towards the inside of the village. Then he pointed to a tall building. There you will find Mizukage-sama. He will be glad to hear from another village, especially from such a handsome messenger as you. Naruto smiled at the woman's flirtation and put his hand on her. Oh, but I'm pretty tired from the trip. Could you find me a place to rest? The woman smiled, although she was surprised that he was flirting with her too. He clung to Naruto's muscular t-shirt and wrapped his arms around his neck. I think I can arrange something for you to come to my house. Naruto smiled, and as his hand slipped dangerously, Naruto chuckled as he pulled his hand out. We'll continue later tonight. The girl nodded, dazed and weak, sitting in her chair. Naruto simply shook his head with a mocking smile and walked in the direction he was directed. He arrived a little faster than expected and was following a honey down the stairs towards the Mizukage's office. Mizukage-sama, a messenger from Konoha is here, the shinobi said after opening the door to let Naruto in. Naruto entered and made a bow before observing the childish features of the young Mizukage. His eyes, attracted by the papers on the desk, seemed to travel over her body. Naruto wondered if it was a blessing to have such a great energy, or if he should feel guilty about the amount of men who would be deprived of a woman's love. Go on, it's not my problem. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and walked over to Yagura. I'm surprised to hear anything from Konoha. Yagura mused as he put down the pencil. What would Konoha like to send me? Naruto took the scroll out of his pocket and handed it to the woman. I have no idea, Mizukage. I'm just the transporter. Yagura smiled smugly before turning his attention back to the scroll he had opened. After a minute of reading in silence, he closed it and spoke again. I would like to take the Chunin exams and talk to the Hokage, but I have my own problems. Killing innocent people who were born with a special ability. Naruto asked, crossing his arms. They are not innocent. Yagura shouted, with a faded smile and a frown. All the wars were brought to us because of them. They did this. Anuchiya killed my parents when I was born. Naruto interrupted the woman with a shocked expression. I wanted the Kirugi, which my mother contained, and she was weak after giving birth. The perfect time to attack. He killed her guards and got to her. As the seal was weak at that time, he had no problem releasing the beast, but at the cost of his life. My father was mortally wounded while trying to stop him, but he was unsuccessful and sealed the one in me at the cost of his life. I'm sorry, the woman said as she rounded her table and hugged the blonde. Then you understand, but I don't blame the whole clan, Naruto said, hugging Yagura by the waist to hold her back. The same clan helped me to live after everything I went through. If anything can convince you, I will. Yagura's eyes glowed a blackish red before returning to